Chapter 221. Ah Ling spoke in a somewhat hesitant murmur. Brother Su, you and your companions really have a great relationship. That's for sure. After all, we're all one big loving family. The fog was thick. Su Qi and Ethan Dawn, along with a group of players, were making their way through the mist. He had spent less than half an hour with Ah Ling. The rest of the time he had been following the team on missions, understanding the map mostly, but even more so, fighting. The ways to proceed through the sequence, the methods of ascension, were numerous and varied, but combat was the main way to integrate spiritual ability points and increase spiritual power. Of course, he couldn't miss out. After all, there was still time before the big event, and Buxian couldn't just sit idle. Ethan Dawn expressed his surprise. Brother Yang, it feels like we've walked a long distance without encountering any chaotic monsters. Are there none left nearby? The two of them led on their own, guiding a group of ordinary players from the Justice League. Over the past 2 days, they had reached a stage where they called each other brothers. Su Qi calmly said, After all, many players are competing. These extermination missions are less dangerous and the points are earned quickly, naturally becoming the most taken missions by all players. It's so competitive, Ethan Dawn muttered. Why do I feel like this final home keeps issuing endless tasks as if it's exploiting all the players? Su Qi shook his head. That's not the way to put it. I don't like hearing that. They seek peace and safety, and we get spirit coins and points. Why not enjoy it? That's true, Ethan Dawn sighed reluctantly. This is the key way for ordinary players to accumulate points, not to mention spirit coins. The latter's value in the real world has already reached a 1:100 ratio. Simply put, 1 spirit coin could be exchanged for 100 yuan. The key was, they were priceless. All players in the public test held few spirit coins. Moreover, the clubs wouldn't sell the spirit coins they held, and in reality, a big hand was controlling the market, maintaining the exchange rate at 1:100. Ordinary players naturally became frantic, pushing themselves to the limit. But why do I feel like the spirit coins given by the missions seem to be much less than those of the Guardians before? It's good as long as there is some, and players don't spend the spirit coins they earn anyway. Su Qi patted his shoulder. According to market demand and supply relations, when the total money supply increases and consumption stays the same, the likelihood of overproduction rises, and the currency LM curve shifts to the right. Brother Yang, can you say something I understand? To put it simply in one sentence, if you don't do it, there are plenty of others who will. Ethan Dawn, I got that, but why does it feel so heart-wrenching? Of course, this was a lie, because Su Qi had adjusted the task handover for players. The rule set by Tentacle Man was to split with the abnormalities 50-50. Su Qi turned it into an 80-20 split. At this moment, Su Qi suddenly paused and looked ahead. There seems to be something up ahead. The many ordinary players perked up immediately, entering battle mode. Ethan Dawn also turned serious. Brother Yang, is there something wrong? It was Ethan Dawn who led the team before, but now, it had become Su Qi's lead, as this cheerful and sunny young man, through very calm analysis and command, had resolved the crisis for the players on 2 dangerous missions. After several more missions, the players by now had a lot of faith in Su Qi. Don't be nervous. It's other players. Other players. Ethan Dawn's expression stiffened slightly. His gaze flickered toward the distance, where more than a dozen members of a club slowly emerged, dragging the body of a 7th-rank polluted creature, exuding a dangerous aura as they walked along. The body of the polluted would attract the same sequence monsters, but its aura would also intimidate many beings rank below it. The young man at the forefront was the player who had been sharpening his hidden blade at the first outpost. He looked with some surprise and interest at Ethan Dawn and Su Qi. It looks like we meet again. Upon entering the central building of Last House, Ethan Dawn also saw the other party and realized that this young man was the rising superstar of Hidden Blade Club, and he was the leader of the current team. Without any renown information available, naturally, Ethan didn't recognize his face. Ethan spoke in a deep voice. Indeed, I didn't expect to run into you here. What's with this pointless banter? And Su Chi paused. Who are you? The young man narrowed his eyes slightly, glanced at Su Chi, and then smiled. If I've forgotten, it's not important. However, this is neither the place for you nor. Without your second and third here, you shouldn't have shown up. Ethan's voice grew heavier. What do you mean? They were on their way to the stronghold to meet with Penelope Bloom and Justice Chief, the two big shots, but they were a bit late due to task handover. At this moment, it seemed like something was amiss. Because? The young man looked into the distance and smiled. They're here. Figures were emerging from the distant fog. This path. Someone indeed arrived earlier. Members of the Magnetic Card Club slowly appeared, with a red-haired woman at the forefront, adorned with various electromagnetic force items, and with a menacing grin. Yo, aren't these Hidden Blades people? These guys, are they your underlings? I wanted to yell, underlings my ass. But Su Chi looked towards another group, as numerous figures continuously made their appearance. It seemed like the top clubs had an agreement to meet here, and moreover, they had avoided the stronghold, avoided final home. Ethan Dawn was now silent. He was at best a core member of the Justice League, while the super newcomers and super players from the top clubs were present. Bad. I'm starting to panic. Panic about what? Su Chi looked at them. As a member of the Justice League set to take down Su Buxian, shouldn't you stand tall and confident? Your spiritual power is even higher than mine. Su Chi had also noticed. These people had an unspoken agreement. Everyone kept silent, seemingly waiting for other clubs to arrive. It looked like they'd caught up with something big. The Justice League players, however, were gradually looking weaker and trembled before the multitude of influential figures. And at that very moment, 6 hours remaining until the Ascension Points elimination starts. The countdown appeared every hour, and people had grown accustomed to it. But the next moment, attention! Main task, audience eligibility, will be linked to players' points. Only the top 1,000 from each region and an additional 100 with outstanding performance will qualify. Points. At the same time, points will play a very important role in the final audience phase. P.S. Fate is turning. Countless insignificant lives are being watched at this moment. Even if inconspicuous or of lowly status, struggling in despair, a new era is coming. In the grand prelude of this era, those who can make a name for themselves will surely be born. Everyone briefly fell into silence. We had countdown before, but now there's new information. Someone squinted, and they emphasized points. And there's this cryptic message at the end. I don't know about the rest. Someone paused briefly and laughed. But from what I see now, the priority to deal with Su Buxian just increased. Tentacle Man silently observed a star chart in Chaotic City, clutching the remaining spirit coins in his hand, looking somewhat ragged while standing inconspicuously in the crowded queue for a large-scale teleportation ritual, surrounded by terrifying beings with dangerous auras. The respected manager in Final Home was just a weak and insignificant creature here. It's been a month. I wonder what has become of Final Home. He felt heavy-hearted and slowly closed his eyes. He still remembered 2 years ago. The entire world was as dark and profound as a decaying star river with chaos, where an apocalyptic silence and abnormalities were pervasive. And now, nothing had changed, even after establishing Final Home. Whether it was himself, his daughter, or the numerous abnormalities, all were still struggling. The burden on one's shoulders was much heavier than imagined. Hopefully, nothing chaotic happens in Final Home, and everything can go over smoothly. Chapter 222. Brotherhood in the Storm of the Evil God. Everyone please follow the rules of Chaotic City, and prohibit all violations. Those who wish to leave this world, please don't hurry. Queue up in an orderly manner. Tentacle Man was now queuing up. He really wanted to get back to Final Home as quickly as possible. After all, the entire pollution world now seemed to be growing ever larger, But only he understood that in such a dangerous world, everything was in jeopardy and could collapse at any moment. As a manager, he could only take all the produce from Final Home, collect strange materials from the pollution world, and come to this chaotic boundary, exchanging everything that could help alleviate the crisis in Final Home. Also, Tentacle Man's gaze dimmed slightly. He was also searching for a way to cure his daughter, to give her a normal body that didn't have to suffer pain. His daughter was truly special. After all, she had died, and it was only by force that he had kept her soul here and miraculously recovered her consciousness. But to truly live was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. There are 3 methods. One is to ask for the aid of entities above the 5th rank of sequences. Perhaps they could stabilize my daughter's body, an abnormality of flesh and blood, so she need not be replaced. But how could such entities care about someone like me? Another is requesting a recovery ritual, which could also heal little Ah Ling, but it would cost more than 100 times what Final Home produces in a year in spirit coins. An extremely high and terrifying treatment cost that I simply can't afford right now. The third is to replace with another body. Tentacle Man's expression was gloomy. He was a surgeon and had nearly studied all the literature related to neurology in order to save his daughter. But after all, he was just one person, without background, without strength, without funds. He could only maintain her using the strange activity inherent in the abnormal flesh and blood alongside his own tentacles' neurotransmitters, etc. How could he not know his daughter's pain? Yet he was powerless to help. Various technological worlds. While they possessed the relevant neurological technology, it simply wasn't spread about. At this moment, all you fellows below the 7th rank of sequences, remember to shield yourselves with spiritual energy to avoid being injured by the shock. A deep voice resounded in everyone's ears. Tentacle Man's power was of the 7th rank, and he looked up toward the distance. Boom! 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 A colossal black ship, enormous as a mountain range, thunderously broke through nihility, sailing out and appearing atop a platform. The gusting wind shook everyone slightly, feeling an array of mysterious rituals emitting powerful auras above. Begin unloading! A voice shouted deeply, beside which rituals on the ships flashed with astonishing spiritual energy, and a large number of personnel began heading towards that ship. Tentacle Man watched this scene, not surprised at all, as it was not the first time he had seen it. Ships that traveled the 10,000 realms would bring massive cargoes to Chaotic City for sale, and this was one of the reasons why Chaotic City was a central hub of trade. Giant boxes carrying goods, which were as tall as 50 meters, were grabbed by several giant abnormalities and placed on the ground. There were many goods, weird and diverse, including pollutants, abnormal slaves being trafficked, and unique items from various worlds. The quantity was vast, so vast that it was frightening. After all, as the trading hub of this boundary, Chaotic City attracted massive numbers of people and demands for purchase from all directions. Tentacle Man was just one inconspicuous grain of sand amongst them. This is... Tentacle Man's expression suddenly shook, a giant box with distinct packaging being held carefully by a huge abnormality, seemingly different from the other goods. Goods from Night City. Standing beside it, an abnormality with a powerful aura watched calmly in that direction. Night City. Tentacle Man seemed to have heard these 3 words. He remembered now. Previously, many people had gone to participate in some kind of auction, which had been advertised. Though the strength of its world was not strong, it was a celebrated hub city for influencers. But what was critical wasn't that. It was the packaging on the box. There was a man wearing a luxurious tuxedo, and beside him an emblem engraved with some sort of commercial guild's name, which was obscured by the huge abnormal's hand. Tentacle Man didn't see clearly. You're not going to tell me you don't know what happened in Night City, are you? The abnormal, arms crossed, looked at Tentacle Man. Tentacle Man shook his head, then gave a bitter smile. I don't come here often. I'd appreciate it if you enlighten me, elder brother. He came to Chaotic City once every 3 or even 6 months, as amassing spirit coins took time, and the cost of round-trip transportation was exorbitant. Geez, You know about Nancy, right? I've heard a bit. Seems like she's a quite famous host. Even though Tentacle Man didn't visit often, he would comprehensively learn about the information he needed to know, which major forces in Chaotic City couldn't be provoked, which powerful individuals needed to be avoided or even pleased. As a small figure bearing the fate of over 100,000 people, every step was fraught with difficulty and caution. He needed to be aware of the information from outside the chaotic world as well. The abnormal spoke. Do you know about the Spirit King? Tentacle Man was startled and nodded quickly. Of course! The various major forces were one thing, but the name of the Spirit King shone like the sun over all the connected worlds, dazzling and brilliant. That was also a supreme existence too high for him to reach. Then this should be easy. The abnormal began casually. Nancy has become the commercial endorser of a guild in Night City. Crucially, this guild has the backing and investment of the scion of the Sunset Spirit King, and all goods from the guild in Night City have become coveted items. Chapter 223. The first batch of goods should have been delivered by now. Abnormality clicked his tongue. I expect a lot of people will rush to buy them. Tentacle Man asked curiously. What kind of goods are they selling? The latest prosthetics? Neural connection systems? There are also super dream chips, super dream stations, and so on that are still in development. It's said that once a super dream station is installed in the world, there might even be a chance to connect with other worlds. However, I think it's all nonsense. Abnormality prattled on without stopping. Upon hearing terms such as prosthetics and neural connections, Tentacle Man's eyes widened abruptly. How much does a set of those neural-connected prosthetics cost? I'm not sure. Why are you thinking of buying? Abnormality sized Tentacle Man up. I'd advise you not to dream. Ever since the investment endorsement of the Spirit Prince's heir, these now belong to the high-end luxury market. Plus, they're scarce in supply, usually directly collected by major powers or influential existences. Tentacle Man seemed to understand and fell into silence. This meant these things were priceless. Currently, you couldn't buy them even if you wanted to. At this moment, what are you standing there for? Move it. The abnormality managing the team suddenly spoke with a cold voice. Tentacle Man hurriedly averted his gaze, showing a submissive gesture, and expressed his apologies in a fluster. Sorry, I'll catch up right away. He wrapped himself in his clothing, not daring to look any further. Too weak, having neither strength nor background. Final Home was still in a tough environment for survival, with all the pressure bearing down on the likes of small fries like him, like a stormy sea. These were ultimately beyond his reach. Bang! Su-Chi kicked Ethan Dawn. Why are you so tense? It's not what I had in mind. Ethan Dawn looked ahead, somewhat trembling, and said, I just think they've gone mad. They're actually gathering all the top clubs, all the powerful first and second tier players, to hunt down and 7th rank terror. Among the cliffs around, there were probably 200 or 300 people, including many strong solo players who followed the top clubs. Everyone was holding their breath as if waiting for something. Don't be nervous. Penelope Bloom and Justice Chief, along with other players from the Justice League, were also here. Penelope Bloom spoke calmly. We were planning to wait for you guys to join us before discussing this, but you guys just happened to run into it. Luckily, we didn't wait and rushed over. What was unexpected was, Justice Chief said, puzzled, I thought you would be ostracized. But when we brought people over, we saw you gathering together with other club members as if you were discussing something. You'll have to ask Brother Yang about that. Ethan Dawn looked at Su-Chi. Facing everyone's gaze, Su-Chi opened his mouth with a light smile. It wasn't much. Wasn't there a system pop-up? A bunch of confusing words. Everyone was analyzing. I just gave some guidance, that's all. Ethan Dawn interjected. More than that. Brother Yang, you even laid out strategies and plans for the manhunt for Su Buxian, convincing many top clubs to unite. A lot of people were swayed by his words. Oh! Penelope Bloom was surprised. As he listened to Ethan Dawn's narration, his eyes widened gradually. Such a comprehensive plan. It's like an inescapable net, pushing the Su Buxian into a dead end. Justice Chief couldn't help but look at Su Qi, hesitating for a moment before saying, I'm starting to doubt whether you have a personal grudge against the Su Buxian. Su Qi revealed a smile. How could I have a grudge? I've never even met him. Plus, I'm kind to others, make friends everywhere, as charming as a gentleman could be. Ethan Dawn said with a dark face, All right, stop flattering yourself. So, Su Qi said with a light chuckle. So I think, if Su Buxian could have points over 100 million, he must be extraordinary, naturally requiring planning. After all, everyone understands the importance of points now. Justice Chief nodded. Indeed, we valued them before, and now joining forces to hunt this 7th rank monster is also for points. But what I didn't expect was that its priority turned out to be even higher than imagined. A 7th rank pollution monster's points were as high as several million. However, at the same time, its danger and horror level were not something individual players could withstand. As said before, the higher up the sequence, the wider the chasm became. 7th rank, at most 20-some people could engage in fierce battle and kill one. But for the 7th rank, it was even more extraordinary. With over 300 people present, the atmosphere was charged with the spirit of team combat, yet many still wore grave expressions. Look, just for a few million points, it's already like this. Imagine the struggle for hundreds of millions of points. It'll probably be even more intense, Penelope Bloom said. And who knows where Su Buxian is at this moment? Ethan Dawn replied, Who cares about him? No matter where he is, he can't escape. And I've already agreed with Brother Yang. We'll lead a team together to hunt down Su Buxian. My probing abilities combined with Brother Yang's analysis. We aim to be the first to find Su Buxian's trail. Su Qi said, I don't know where your confidence comes from, but I have high hopes for you. An hour ago, in the pop-up information, Su Qi clearly pointed out the key messages to everyone, pushing the importance of points to yet another level. Of course, what he said was also true. His purpose in doing this was simple, to stir up everyone's craving for points, to realize the importance of points. And they were indeed extremely envious of his own hundreds of millions of points, because Su Qi feared they wouldn't come if they felt the danger. After all, that area was indeed terrifyingly abnormal, and he, faint-hearted on his own, needed companions to go together, to venture forward hand in hand. Let's not worry about Su Buxian for the moment. It seems there's movement in the habitat of the 7th rank pollution monster, the Justice Chief said, his expression becoming much more solemn. He gazed into the distance. At the same time, many others also tightened their expressions, concealing their forms and movements as they looked ahead. Why are you shaking again? Penelope Bloom said exasperatedly to Ethan Dawn. Boss, it's unavoidable to feel nervous. After all, I've really seen a 7th rank entity before. Ethan Dawn spoke in a low voice with resignation. I've encountered a horrifically huge spider before. It must have been a 7th rank being. That oppressive feeling and aura were simply unbearable. We had over 100 people then, and if it hadn't been scared away by some inexplicable fright, we might have all been wiped out. Penelope Bloom shook her head. Weren't you two in the same encounter? Why are you the only one scared? Look at him. Ethan Dawn coughed. Brother Yang is just pretending to be calm, disguising his true self. You could see through it? Su Qi looked at him quizzically. Indeed, I put on a bit of an act, since I was the one who scared it away. See, he's delirious, talking nonsense. Ethan Dawn remarked. Look, even when one tells the truth, nobody believes it. Justice Chief calmly looked into the distance and said, All right, stop talking. It's here. A 7th rank pollution monster often establishes its own territory, so there's no need to worry about other monsters of the same level nearby. It was the sighting of this one that had decided the major forces to unite in action. After all, not only could they gain a high amount of points, but they could also take this creature back to final home and exchange it for a substantial amount of spirit coins. On the desolate ground in the distance, a gaunt monster slowly appeared, standing 10 meters tall. Its stooped figure resembled that of an old man. Even its footsteps seemed to float slightly. But none dared to even breathe out loud, because this old monster was covered in ghastly faces, carrying a basket on its back, covered with a layer of flesh so muddled it was hard to tell how many people it had been stitched together from. Even those who had seen myriad monsters felt their scalp tingle in the face of such a grotesque and terrorizing entity. Moreover, this old monster was immensely strong and dangerous. Its body had a chilling aura to it that made countless others feel as if they were about to be dragged into the bottomless abyss. Shu Qi, however, found it all too familiar. Anything from the Abyss Camp tended to be more or less the same. Abnormalities survive in chaos, the powerful stand in the present world. Pollution monsters come from the abyss. Shu Qi watched this scene unfold. Evil God Brother hasn't yet recovered, hasn't left the ceiling, and he's already caused all sorts of worlds to be shrouded in haze and poison. Not to mention what would happen once the ceiling is lifted. When that time comes, it remains to be seen whether Evil God Brother will be the first to celebrate new life, welcome freedom, or travel the world in search of their stormy brotherhood. Chapter 224-176. I'll take charge as the General Commander. At that moment, hundreds of people were besieging the polluted old man's face monster, standing 10 meters tall, expressionless, every skill and spiritual energy tool flung at it. When they exploded on its body, they only left superficial traces. This damn thing is too bulky. Careful, it's coming for us. The monstrous energy emanating from the old man's face monster made the very ground tremble. Everyone calling out in shock and disbelief. Quick, defend. Get out of the way. Different cries made the team almost fall into chaos. A large number of people were sent flying harshly. Someone cursed. Damn it! Can't you coordinate a bit? It's too chaotic. Everyone, calm down for me. The ghost-faced magician spoke with a resonating voice, coldly saying, It doesn't matter if you're here for a share of the loot or competing for points. Now listen to my command. Don't scatter. Those with restraining abilities, use your special abilities. Those with long-range skills and bursts, attack its heart. Even if it breaks through and comes at us, don't run. Deploy defense skills together. Now the battle was in chaos, with various organizations and solo players mixed together. Someone had to step forward for overall command. The players also settled down a bit. They immediately cooperated in the siege, following the orders given. Boom! 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 All kinds of special abilities burst forth. The human-faced monster remained expressionless. It was like a dead corpse, devoid of any emotion or ripples. But the twisted sense of eeriness on its body gave everyone the creeps. And in the next moment, all the faces on its body suddenly opened their eyes, hundreds of eyeballs large and small, densely packed as if desperately trying to squeeze out, staring at everyone. Everyone being watched tensed up. They were suddenly unable to move. What's going on? Damn, I can't move. And all the special abilities that had just attacked were caught by the faces, causing waves of twisted fluctuations. Then, the bursts were reflected back at them. Damn! Everyone shouted in horror. They hurriedly unleashed their spiritual energy to free themselves from the restraints and dodge. Luckily, with the power of numbers, the binding force wasn't strong. If a single person faced this creature, they would undoubtedly face certain death. The ghost-faced magician and several of the super rookies wore faces filled with fear and solemnity. Penelope Bloom took a deep breath, looking grave. 7th rank really does seem like a huge chasm, filled with odd and twisted strangeness. Our abilities are completely twisted and chaotic. With so many of us here, we still can't get a grasp on its powers. Their once proud lethal attacks, no matter how much spiritual energy they burst forth, no matter how powerful, were like hitting against an undetectable ripples, stopped dead in their tracks. Some high sequences traits have rules of priority. Either break the limits with a burst of spiritual energy or discover the patterns to break them. Our spiritual energy gets absorbed and then bounced back. And it has no flaws at all. The ghost-faced magician's face was overcast. He couldn't see any way through. Is this what 7th rank is like? The gap was simply too vast. And at this time, the human skin old monster now reached into the basket covered by human skin on its back, then took out a rattle, although it looked like a toy in its hand. In reality, compared to its size, the entire rattle was actually as huge as a mallet. All the faces on the human skin old monster then closed their eyes again. At this moment, it actually let out a raspy laugh, as if a cold blood-tinged wind was filling the air, with a mixture of mockery, horror, and murderous intent. Then it incredibly began to dance around, one hand still shaking the rattle. Everyone's expressions trembled slightly. Thump, thump, thump. The rattle sounded, wave upon wave, like heavy hammers hitting everyone straight in their chests. Everyone felt a dull force pounding on their bodies. There's even an AOE. What kind of terrifying monster is this? The people's expressions were filled with doubt. This 7th rank monster wasn't about how strong it was. Facing hundreds of people, it couldn't just destroy everything instantly. But what really troubled everyone was its eeriness, leaving the crowd powerless, as if punching the air. Someone shouted, "What should we do now? Attack or defend?" "Attack. Interrupt it," the ghost-faced magician said in a deep voice. Another massive burst followed, but the next moment, the rattle stopped, the dance interrupted, and all the faces on the old man's face monster opened their eyes again. Everyone once more experiencing the bindings. The force again bounced back at them. Watch out! Everyone's faces changed, dodging again. This time, seemingly in collaboration with the power of the rattle, both its force and speed had clearly increased. Boom! 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 Some people didn't even manage to break free from the binding before being violently blown away. And in the next moment, thump! 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 The rattle and the strange, eerie dance synchronized again. This time, the old man's face monster was also singing a weird chant. Everyone could distinctly feel the temperature around them getting colder, the chill on their bodies growing stronger. All of their palms broke out in a cold sweat, hearts filling with fear. Some even found they couldn't use their spiritual energy. Some thought they saw phantom evil spirits appearing around them. Others had blood-red eyes and roared in fury. Damn! There's even a spiritual pollution attack. Quite a few people have been affected. Ethan Dawn's body trembled slightly. Brother Yang, I feel like something bad is happening. The rattle it's hitting could soon have free rein to kill most of us. Not necessarily, Su Qi. Once it attacks, the spiritual influence will stop, and when it's hitting the rattle, it's also consuming its own strength. Chapter 225. Ethan Dawn's eyes lit up. So you mean the situation isn't bad right now? We still have a chance? Of course, the rattle it's banging is not lethal. It's just because everyone is afraid, which magnifies its effect. Su Qi paused, calmly saying, and right now, it's just gathering strength for a big move to wipe us all out. Ethan Dawn suddenly widened his eyes. What do you mean just? Isn't this situation even worse? Don't panic. They've made their move. Su Qi looked into the distance. All the top talents were standing at the forefront, each with a stern expression, directly and without hesitation, carrying their weapons, charging toward that face-like monster. Penelope Bloom and Justice Chief did the same. They had realized that only physical damage seemed to pose a threat to it. As for the face monster, it stood tall, its pupils dripping with blood-red eyeballs, and it let out a weird laugh, then stopped dancing and swung the rattle in its hand as a weapon, furiously hammering everyone attacking it. In that instant, everyone who attacked felt their heads burst, their bodies stiffen, and their eyes seemingly saw blood red. Then, one after another, they were harshly hammered and sent flying. Even the ghost-faced magician, Penelope Bloom, and Justice Sheriff couldn't resist and were brutally blown away. Boss! Ethan Dawn quickly activated his skill, forming a cushion of soft membrane, catching Penelope Bloom and others in the same direction. including the ghost-faced magician. And the face monster did not pursue its victory. But, bang bang bang, the rattle started banging again. The eerie dance of the old man, along with that creepy sound, struck fear on everyone's face. Only Su Chi lightly clicked his tongue. Dancing, although weird, and the sound quite unpleasant. This rhythm hits exactly on the beat without any deviation. That's not easy. If in another place, he's absolutely an elderly artist with artistic pursuits. Ethan Dawn, why do I hear high praise in your tone? This isn't right, totally not right. An ordinary 7th rank monster shouldn't be this powerful. At this moment, ghost-faced magician's corners of his mouth oozed blood as he raised his head, clenched his teeth, and stared intensely at the skin-like monster. Previously they managed to negotiate. Now they were completely helpless, even powerless to resist. The opponent seemed much stronger than before. Moreover, that terrifying presence was spreading more and more. He felt utterly powerless. This was completely different from the 7th rank information he had gotten in Paradise. At this time, when everyone saw the top players quickly defeated, their eyelids twitched, and their morale plummeted, wanting to retreat and flee. When someone starts to flee, everything is declared a failure, and most likely, most people won't be able to escape. Fear and fog have already intertwined, causing everyone to lose themselves and become one of this old artist's facial pieces. Su Chi murmured softly. Everyone looked at him with uncertain eyes, Penelope Bloom's expression a bit grave. We can't even escape. This monster is beyond the ordinary. Su Chi turned to the ghost-faced magician. Aren't you the commander? Speak up, stabilize the morale. Ghost-faced magician's face was hideous. He was in no position to stabilize any morale right now. Originally, they were disunited, and now it's a complete rout. Since that's the case, Su Chi said lightly, then I'll take over. You? The numerous top players looked at this young man, and then everyone silently watched as Su Chi took out a small megaphone. Ethan Dawn's eyes widened even further. Where did you get that thing? And in the next moment, beep! The crisp sound echoed through the open area, along with echoes and harsh noise. Everyone couldn't help but startle, their attention diverted. Even the face monster couldn't help but turn towards Su Chi. Facing everyone's gaze, Su Chi apologized with a smile. Sorry, I pressed the wrong button. The crowd. Su Chi raised the megaphone to his mouth and calmly said, all players, please pay attention. I am now your commander. My name is Sunlit Big Boy. I hope you all get used to and remember me. Everyone's eyelids twitched. Also, a reminder for those who want to flee and give up. If you do that, there's only one way out for you. Su Chi pointed to his own forehead. From the moment you stared into those face eyeballs, you've been quietly targeted. It will sicken your mind with fear, gradually twisting your perception. In short, you'll get lost in the fog, and then be pursued by this old artist like he's chasing chickens. Su Chi paused, then spit out a word. Violated. What is this gibberish? Ethan Dawn roared. Then let's change it to humiliation. Is there any difference? And your language skills come from textbooks, right? Then everyone immediately noticed a small black dot between their eyebrows. It looked almost imperceptible, but it indeed carried a bizarre aura. When they tried to rub it off, they found it couldn't be removed. Someone despaired. So we're definitely going to die. What should we do? Should we try to run? Or should we fight with all we've got? Su Chi, holding a megaphone, shook his head. I've already said to follow my command. Have you not noticed that its aura hasn't increased? Everyone cast dubious glances toward the person-faced old monster, who continued to shake the rattle and perform its eerie dance. Indeed, since the beginning, the chilling air around it had not intensified. What exactly is going on? Because emotions are its nourishment, and fear is the source of its power. The reason it's becoming more and more powerful is merely because it has been instilling fear step by step. Everyone was stunned. No wonder the monster was becoming increasingly terrifying. Ethan Dawn also caught on. I see. So Brother Yang, what you did just now wasn't for fun, but to distract everyone and temporarily divert them from fear, right? Su Chi was momentarily taken aback. Then he nodded. I see, that's right. Everyone? Is it really though? It doesn't matter. Su Chi locked eyes with the person-faced monster, smiling. Now, please pay attention. Let's resume strategic deployment and initiate the attack. When attacking, cover your eyes so you don't meet its gaze, and you won't be bound or repelled. It's okay if you miss. OE will handle it. Just keep using skills. At that moment, the person-faced old monster seemed to sense something was wrong and stared intensely at Su Chi, swatting away the surrounding skills and charging toward him. Su Chi, look, it's moved to rage. Top players, go tie it down. And don't all go. 3 of you stay behind to protect me. Penelope Bloom, Justice Chief, and ghost-faced magician fell silent. Su Chi's speech was very rapid, seemingly having a clear understanding of many people's skill information on the scene, directing players from all positions just right. When to retreat, when to charge, deplete, burst. Including the person-faced old monsters, every move was detected. A team of hundreds of people was being directed so nearly everyone played their part, rather than being a mess as before. Is this the power it absorbed before depleting? But it still doesn't show any wounds, Penelope Bloom said gravely. Moreover, the players had already used a lot of it in the previous battle. Justice Chief also spoke gravely. If we can't deliver a fatal blow, the result will be the same. A short burst and perfect command could certainly improve the current situation a lot, but everyone would ultimately become exhausted, and due to their decreased strength, be unable to defeat the opponent, and fear would rise again. It was all just a vicious cycle. That's true. Su Chi looked at the person-faced monster, who was staring intensely back at him, seemingly aware that all the current circumstances were caused by this young man holding the megaphone. Continually growling, it burst forth to charge at Su Chi, but it was desperately blocked by numerous other players. Su Chi was their brain. Without this commander, they would probably crumble even faster. Look, even an old artist still has a temper. The 3. Penelope Bloom said gravely, don't worry, we will protect you. But if a solution isn't found within 5 minutes, I'm afraid everything will still. Su Chi interrupted him. Do you see the basket on its back? That's the only place without a face, and it's also its fatal weakness. It's already red-eyed toward me. And now, it's your turn to step in. Chapter 226, 3-hour countdown. The fog polluting the world flowed slowly, casting a deep gloom over everything. Some people felt that monsters born fully from pollution were filled with boundless, bizarre horror. That was quite normal, after all, it was the influence of abyss power, and nothing normal came from that realm. Twisted shapes and the polluted sea were all from there. But Su Chi thought, what horror! Those expressionless, twisted monsters. How aloof. Give them a pair of contemptuous eyes, and see if they aren't stunned. They were just not gentle towards you. Look, the human skin old monster was now being furiously besieged. It glared at him with its blood-red eyes. Wasn't this also a kind of bond? Bang, bang, bang. The human skin old monster burst forth with terrifying rage and murderous intent. It struck out at lightning speed, stirring up mighty ripples. If any of the onlookers had encountered it alone, they would surely face only death. But unfortunately, it was restrained by countless people, tied hand and foot, deeply entangled within. Meanwhile, Penelope Bloom and the other 2 rapidly unleashed their full strength. Now that they knew the enemy's fatal weakness, there was no need to hide it. In this siege, points were distributed by contribution. Who played a key role and who exerted decisive strength were among the factors. Millions of points were now up for grabs. At this moment, Su Chi looked at the scene. It's coming. As a being of the 7th rank, the human skin old monster was not just that capable. It became exceptionally strong by absorbing Fear's bizarre traits during the siege of over 300 people. However, it was clear that it had not yet unleashed its ultimate move. At this moment, constraining, pulling, wearing down, bursting forth, fatal attacks accompanied by several roars, Penelope Bloom and the two others charged with an unstoppable momentum towards the human skin old monster's back. Hiss! It also obviously felt a murderous intent locking onto its back. With a monstrous roar, it tried to burst forth with power, but it was already too late to dodge. The human skin on its back was suddenly penetrated by 3 cold glints of light. Meanwhile, everyone also saw clearly what was inside the basket on its back. That is, inside the basket was a flesh structure, still squirming, with faint black fog flickering within. The next moment, roar! The human skin old monster screamed. Its skin burst open violently. A large amount of black blood and flesh suddenly sprayed out from the basket. What's going on? What is it doing? The countless human faces on the old monster's body suddenly opened their eyes and mouths. Then they let out piercing screams. Mixed with the voices of men, women, children, and elderly, they all erupted. Awe! This bizarre scene made everyone present shiver all over. At the same time, they also saw an inexplicably twisted black fog gushing out from within. Ethan Dawn's eyes widened. Why do I feel like it's about to unleash its ultimate move? Don't worry, Su Chi spoke lightly. It just wants to perish together with us. Su Chi turned his gaze toward the monster, thinking to himself. It seems that it can almost be confirmed now. Pollution monsters, abyss believers, all those completely corroded, they all bear the abyss mark. Previously, lower sequence pollution monsters, including those of the 7th rank, did not exhibit such phenomena. Now it seems they were simply not qualified. Earning the abyss mark comes with a threshold fee, he murmured softly. Compared to everyone in the present world who is desperately ascending ranks, desperately enhancing their strength, this form of pollution is undoubtedly even more unreasonable, able to mass-produce on a large scale a great number of monsters quickly. That was the terror of pollution, the horror of abyss power. Cultists were the same. They held the evil god totem, embraced the bizarre and twisted, and gained faster strength increases and more dangerous powers. No wonder countless forces have betrayed the present world and quietly joined the abyss camp. This virus-like expansion, who could see it and not be confused? This is also why Tentacle Man's final home, though it had grown so large in just 2 years, was still always on the verge of collapse. After all, pollution monsters were constantly born around it, and pollutants' manic nature meant they would grow through inner battles like rearing goo worms, simply unable to keep up with their development pace. It's about time for a conclusion. Time to see this old artist off. Su Chi would not let the opponent unleash its ultimate move, as his pupils slowly changed. A hint of dark light flickered faintly. Waves of bizarre spiritual ripples surged directly towards the human skin old monster. He activated Fingertip Universe, damaged version, which could pull it into the spiritual world. Boom! The human skin old monster only felt its consciousness whirl, and the next moment it found itself in a world where black fog rolled tumultuously, and Su Chi sat upon a throne wrapped in surging black fog. It was a bit dumbstruck, yet enemies meeting were particularly eye-catching. It wanted to roar and pounce. However, the human skin old monster shuddered, because, behind Su Chi, was a vast and terrifying phantom shadow, standing behind him like a protector, and that presence, along with those unseeable pupils, they flickered in and out of the black fog. The next moment, it suddenly fell to its knees. Its head struck the ground with force. It began to kowtow frantically. Chapter 227. Su Chi paused briefly. Good golly, that was a quick kneel. And in reality, it seemed like everyone was springing into action. The human-faced monster's body started to show wounds, from which blood and flesh erupted, inch by inch, yet it did nothing about it, nor did it leave this spiritual realm. even though Su Chi hadn't said or done a thing. It was just crazily kowtowing, expressing its utmost devout worship. It's just too pure. I'm crying to death. Who would have thought the fingertip universe's breath simulation effect would work so well? Of course, the most important factor was that the pollution monster's intelligence was not high. Su Chi didn't even need to do much, and he mused, "One can only say that Evil God's talent for raising bootlickers is absolutely top-notch. Strength, mind, spirit, all wholly and utterly subservient. This was a monster fully corrupted by pollution. And not only that, whenever the evil god was mentioned, others from the Abyss camp felt a surge of genuine fear, worship, and madness from deep within their hearts. Of course, ordinarily, no one dared to use an illusion of the evil god or impersonate its presence. Given that totems, abyss marks, various polluted powers would be drawn to it. Existences that could not be looked upon directly or whose true names were unspeakable also had rules that transcended the present world. All falsehoods would only recoil upon oneself. In a nutshell, piracy was doomed. But then again, what did that have to do with him, who had the official authorization from Evil God? Boom! A terrifying noise came straight from reality. Su Chi released the spiritual world and saw the human-faced monster collapsed on the ground, its body a mess of ruptured flesh, while Penelope Bloom and her bloody companions stood nearby. They had obviously succeeded in the kill. And just like the struggle for the tyrant's body, people rushed forwards, one after another. Points were important, but the body of the 7th rank monster was also highly valuable, sure to fetch a fair number of spirit coins. Su Chi did not join in. After all, if they wanted to exchange for spirit coins, they could only obtain them from the final home. The harder they fought, the more the final home would benefit. And at that moment, system notifications popped up in everyone's field of view. Only 3 hours left until the elimination mechanism activates. All players, please note, this will be the last qualifying stage of the ranking battles. Everyone's gaze sharpened, and then they fought even more fiercely. People were allying just before. Now they've turned their backs on each other without recognition. Ethan Dawn watched their actions with a chill. It's normal. Su Chi spoke up. It's clearly the final stage, and besides, it's all for self-interest. Self-interest can turn enemies into friends, and can make brothers turn against each other. Look, even as the general commander, there's hardly anybody coming over to bow and say thanks to me. Maybe your expectations for gratitude are a bit too high. At this point, everyone's gaze paused again, as the points from the post-team battle were also being allocated. These so-called points weren't merely numbers. They were orbs of light endowed with strange powers. The size and brightness of an orb were indicators of the amount of points. Everyone had one, but some slackers had pitifully small orbs the size of fists. Those who had been valiant in the team battle naturally had much larger orbs. The system was fair, and many regretted not giving their all at that moment. This is the points from a 7th rank monster. Just this orb alone is more than all the points I've gotten from all my previous tasks. If only I could monopolize these points alone. Don't even think about it. No one could face such a terrifying being alone. And for the many top players, orbs as big as cars streamed towards them. The orbs heading for Penelope Bloom and her peers were even larger since they delivered the final blow. Brother Yang, where's yours? Ethan Dawn looked at Su Chi with some confusion, as there was nothing before him, though he had also received a sphere of light himself. It wasn't particularly large among the crowd, but the points were still considerable. Could it be that commanding isn't included? Su Chi didn't really care. His points were already more than enough, and the points now being added were just drop in the ocean. However, the next moment, a dazzling sphere of light slowly rose, several times larger than the combined spheres of Penelope Bloom and the others, drawing the attention of everyone present. Everyone's eyelids twitched. To their astonishment, this huge sphere of light was heading straight for Su Chi. A prompt that only he could see appeared before his eyes. Congratulations, player Su Buxian, for obtaining 792,414 points. As people witnessed this scene, They fell silent. Some were amazed, while others didn't understand. From their perspective, Su Chi did indeed play the role of a commander, but weren't they the ones actually fighting tooth and nail? Why did he get so many points? The majority, however, had a glint in their eyes. They had gathered together for the sake of benefit, and now, with just 3 hours left until the face-off stage, all players would become mortal enemies engrossed in a fight to the death. "You're thinking too small, everyone," Su Chi said calmly, raising a megaphone. "Just these points have blinded you. Think about that Su Buxian. With over 100 million points, even the loose change is much more than what the 7th rank monsters have. Instead of fighting each other at the beginning, we should all unite to hunt him down. Splitting his 100 million points and then competing for them. That's the most foolproof strategy." Ethan Dawn's eyes widened. "I think you really have a grudge against that Su Buxian, rallying everyone against that guy." The key was that several people narrowed their eyes, feeling that there was some sense in his words. After all, Su Buxian was like a massive points package. If they didn't compete for it, they'd be left behind once the points were divided up among others. Of course, Su Chi simply needed tools, the number, strength, and initiative of the players, which in Final Home exceeded the scale of the Guardians by countless times. The pace of their mission purge over the past few days was proof enough of this. It was just too scattered. That dangerous territory required both the safety of Final Home and their full dedication to explore the deep crimson abyss mark. Yet the crowd did not continue to act. With 3 hours left before the elimination mechanism started, whether it was recuperating, handing over the corpses of monsters they had captured, or using spirit coins to purchase tools from Final Home, they all needed time to prepare. Top clubs allied with one another. Yet once again there was a subtle atmosphere emerging amongst them. The young man from Hidden Blade smiled and pointed to Su Chi. "That kid is right. We do need to focus on hunting down that Su Buxian. Instead of engaging in an elimination fight, we should first find that guy." A bright and cheerful big boy. The woman in a trench coat, with a cigarette in her mouth, smiled gently. "I not only like the sunshine but also big boys. You must be a solo player, right? That command was no small feat. I think you could come with me. I can give you close protection." Justice Chief frowned deeply. "You're poaching in front of us? Pretending we don't exist?" Penelope Bloom also smiled lightly. "Brother Yang is also a core member of our alliance, and we will keep him safe." "Actually," Su Chi suddenly paused, then said, "I think her proposal is quite good. Penelope Bloom? Stay where you are." Penelope Bloom pressed her forehead. "Don't worry, with the few points you have, not many people will covet them, and even if they do, we're the main force that draws their fire." All right. Su Chi spread his hands. "My apologies, big sis." The woman in the trench coat. The leaders of the many top clubs watched calmly, choosing not to speak further as they prepared to leave. And a young man with a 7th rank symbol on his head calmly cast a glance at Su Chi. "Meeting you, I'll let you off just this once. But only once." He then left. Su Chi laughed. "This guy's pretty nice." Penelope Bloom. "Just listen and leave it at that. Right now, it's just the prelude to the raging storm. Although everyone can stand together and talk now, it's only because the time hasn't come yet. In 3 hours, every person for that so-called qualification, for the final stage of this ranking battle, will become so ruthless. It's beyond what you, an ordinary player, can imagine." Chapter 228. The Eye of the Storm, Su Buxian. Please note that players with points exceeding 100,000 will be exposed with their coordinates once every hour for 10 minutes, with the degree of exposure tied to their points. Final Home and Strongholds are safe zones. Spending more than 5 hours in a safe zone will trigger continuous, uninterrupted exposure. 3 hours after the countdown began, a system message would update every hour. And now, there are only the final 10 minutes left. All the players had neither entered Final Home nor hidden within the strongholds but were silently moving through the fog. Brother Yang, now, there are only the last 10 minutes left. Ethan Dawn stood at the entrance of a cave, watching the time and the fog outside, speaking with a grave expression. Everyone be ready to move at any time. Although we don't know where those other guys are hiding right now, it seems their main goal is to hunt down Su Buxian first. When the time comes, Brother Yang, you must keep up. Ethan Dawn turned his head and suddenly snapped. Can you not carve stuff on the wall in such a critical moment? Su Qi said, stay calm. Be graceful. You have to understand the principle of keeping your composure even if Mount Tai collapses before you. Is that why you're carving a smiley face on the wall? And doing such an ugly job of it? Ethan Dawn massaged his temples, let out a sigh, and said earnestly and seriously, Brother Yang, listen to me, this is not just a game. I hope you take it seriously. You've managed to acquire so many points, if you can keep them, you might stand out from among the ordinary players in this ranking battle. Is there any benefit to standing out? Ethan Dawn paused. Naturally, you'll be valued by the forces of paradise. That sounds familiar. It seemed that Left Hand and others had said something similar. In fact, the top club's super rookies, including the beta testers, had a completely different attitude towards everything here than the ordinary players. They were clear about the importance of the ranking battle. They understood the profound undercurrents behind it. They were even more aware of the very depths they would encounter upon entering paradise. The forces from paradise did not pour resources into them just to see them chat politely with each other. Without showing enough value, unable to become a force's asset in the future, many of the powers behind the scenes would decisively abandon them. He also spoke the truth. The powers of paradise had been accumulating for many years, with various forces and organizations entrenched. Ordinary players without any background striving to make a name for themselves in paradise would only find it extremely difficult. In fact, people like Left Hand were top forces, as were Night Guard and Su Linqiu from Zone 9, one of the biggest organizations. The other two major organizations were, naturally, Free City and Sequence City, which were also colossal entities. Elimination mechanism countdown begins in 5 minutes. All players, please be prepared. The system map has been generated and can be accessed at any time. The pop-up message appeared again. The map. Ethan Dawn opened the map, his brows slightly raised. Apart from marking my own position, everything around is fog. Su Qi looked at the map for a moment. That means, even though the coordinates will be exposed in real time, the actual effectiveness of this is still in question. Ethan Dawn nodded. It also gives those exposed a chance to react, but once they're surrounded or their position is predicted, being found is inevitable. The boss and the others are nearby too. Although they're spread out, they can respond very quickly and set up. He looked at the map. Now, it depends on where Su Buxian is. At this moment, players in other locations were also silently waiting for the game map to refresh. The last minute. Everyone, get ready. Primary target is Su Buxian. Secondary targets are all players we encounter along the way. The young man from Hidden Blade said calmly. Su Buxian, who has been hiding for a few days, finally can't remain hidden. The ghost-faced magician's gaze turned slightly cold. Over 100 million points. What kind of brilliance would that be? And finally, a minute had passed. The system message appeared before everyone's eyes. It's here. Ethan Dawn quickly fixed his eyes on the map, which gradually began to reveal twinkling points of light like ripples in water, the surrounding fog dissipating from the center of these lights and slowly rotating. He understood. Those were the top players with over 100,000 points, and the amount of points could be discerned by the brightness of the light and the degree of rotation of the surrounding fog. For instance, his boss's presence nearby was clearly indicated by 2 twinkling points just a few kilometers away. What's more important, the fog around them was undulating, clearly rotating with more intensity and thickness. Where's Su Buxian, then? Wait a second. Ethan Dawn's eyelids suddenly twitched. One ball of light. No, a flare. No, a sun. It was like a burning, impassioned sun furiously crashing down onto the ground. The entire map was initially just a 3D plane effect. But, influenced by that terrifyingly bright orb, The surrounding fog spun wildly like a hurricane, towering to several dozen times its height and speed. A fearsome twister that lifted a vast amount of fog from the map, declaring the center of the storm. Your mother's kiss. This is just outrageous. However, Ethan Dawn had no time for surprise, as he excitedly discovered, Brother Yang, the light is extremely close to us. The fog was turbulent, but the position at the center of the light remained identifiable. The margin of error isn't more than a kilometer. He's right near us. Moreover, Ethan Dawn immediately noticed other points of light on the map starting to move. Boss and the others have started moving, and all the other lights are also converging this way. Our luck is so damn good. Brother Yang, hurry up and get ready for action. Let's encircle him with the boss. Ethan Dawn suddenly fails to get a response, and turning his head, he sees with wide eyes. Why are you still carving words on the wall? Su Chi spoke calmly. Don't rush it. 10 minutes should do. The nearest point of light on the map would take about that long to get here. That's enough time. Enough time for what? Aren't you afraid that Su Buxian will run away? Isn't he the target you always say you want to hunt down? Ethan Dawn was getting anxious, genuinely afraid that Su Buxian would escape. Haven't you noticed that he seems to have not moved at all? Ethan Dawn was taken aback, looking at the terrifying bright spot on the map. Although the surrounding fog was swirling intensely, the eye of the storm indeed hadn't moved. He was somewhat dazed. Why? Shouldn't a normal person be frantically referring to all the points of light on the map and making a run for it by now? At that moment, Ethan Dawn's eyelids quivered slightly. Earlier, he had only seen the smiling face that Su Chi had carved. His attention had been entirely on the map. He failed to notice until now the characters carved into the wall. Above were boldly and powerfully inscribed, deep enough to leave a mark. Su Buxian was here. Chapter 229. Su Buxian leads the sniping against Su Buxian. Ethan Dawn's body was slightly stiff as he stared at the 7 characters. His voice trembled a bit as he said, Brother Yang, tell me, what are you doing carving these words for? Practicing calligraphy. What a load of crap calligraphy. Ethan Dawn pursed his lips, forcing a dry laugh. Then I guess, and it's just a guess, it won't matter if I'm wrong. After all, it's only a guess. Brother Yang, you are Su Buxian, right? He was no fool, considering the map coordinates had not changed at all and were nearly overlapping with his own. Any bullshit coincidence or stroke of luck was nonsense because the real Su Buxian was right in front of him. But the multitude of unbelievable emotions still made him unable to confirm completely. So he asked aloud, hoping for a direct answer from Su Chi. Question mark. Su Chi. Didn't I tell you? I'm a sunny and cheerful big boy. Sunny and cheerful my ass. Ethan Dawn suddenly stepped back, roaring angrily. You're bloody Su Buxian. Su Chi looked at Ethan Dawn, who was unconsciously posing defensively, looking back at him hurriedly and in a panic. Good grief. The 12th generation successor of the Wild Chicken sect. Big doofus Ethan. What are you planning to do? Su Chi said calmly. I never told a lie. Don't give me that. The coordinates haven't changed and the calligraphy you're carving is exactly like the one on that painting. Now all the evidence is laid out in plain sight. Ethan Dawn clenched his teeth. And you still say you're not Su Buxian? Su Chi turned around, carving knife in hand that wasn't pausing, still preparing to finish up. When did I ever say I wasn't? You. Ethan Dawn was stunned, realizing he indeed never had. Good. Finally finished. In the dim cave, Su Chi looked at his masterpiece with satisfaction. Although he had used a carving knife, the calligraphy did not lack any of the usual attention to detail, and compared to the script on the scroll, it had more dimension and boldness. How is it? Does it have some charm? With a smiling face to go with it, the strong atmosphere of postmodern art was practically assaulting the senses. Ethan Dawn could no longer contain himself and roared again. At this point in time, you're still carving. Do you know the map is lighting up with a swarm of dots all heading this way? The lure of 1 billion points is enough to make countless people eliminate you. Ordinary people would be frantically running away by now. Su Chi responded breezily. I'm not worried, so why are you? If I had run away earlier, they wouldn't be able to find me, would they? Oh? Wait a second. Why can't I sense any logic in that statement? Ethan Dawn took a deep breath. His emotions were complex, just like the time he found additional questions on the back of an exam paper after the starting bell rang. And it was painful, like promising to sing with colleagues at the annual party. Everyone claiming they are tone-deaf and can't sing, and then someone belts out a high note on stage. Ethan Dawn sighed. You, go now, I'll give out false information or stall for you for a while. Is that touching? Bullshit. What kind of person do you think I am? I'm all about loyalty. When I said Brother Yang, that meant for a lifetime. Ugh. Ethan Dawn clenched his teeth. Damn. This is too disgusting. I can't make this up any longer. He grumbled. Get lost while I can still resist the temptation. Otherwise, I'll just hog all these points for myself. Ethan Dawn truly coveted those points. He couldn't help but fret. Damn it. Even if I hog them, I won't be able to escape. Unless it's owned jointly by the players of those top clubs. It's impossible for one to survive an onslaught of this scale. Su Chi tossed the carving knife back into his item slot. You could never know how much of a hodgepodge he had in there. You're wrong in what you say. I'm not fighting alone. Ethan Dawn's expression hardened. So you do have an organization backing you. Ever since learning of Su Chi's true identity, he had suspected that there was an organization behind him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have remained here so calmly. There were probably allies buried in hiding nearby, ready to extricate him. Of course, Su Chi said. I'm a key member of the Justice League. Didn't you and your boss say you would protect me? Oh? Damn it, the backing organization was myself. Ethan Dawn almost cursed it out loud. Protect my ass. We promised to protect you, because we thought you were an ordinary player getting so many points for the first time. Not eliminating you now already shows I'm being friendly. Besides, now's not the time to talk about this. Ethan Dawn looked at the indicators on the map, already sweating a bit. Most are almost here, and they're getting closer. Even our boss is about 2 kilometers away. After all, to support each other, share information, players of the Justice League were not too far from each other. Su Chi glanced at the converging dots on the map. Having so many groups of light, this is the first time I felt like Ultraman. Stop with the joke. Ethan Dawn pressed his forehead. Do you think they're all here to support you? They're all enemies. It's not a big deal. Su Chi began to walk toward the cave entrance. Haven't you noticed something special about this place? Question mark. Ethan Dawn walked alongside Su Chi. Because they needed to be situated higher up, to have a better vantage point and the advantage of information, their hiding spot was above a cliff. What's so special about here? This is the edge of the final home's safety defense line, which means that beyond the east side of the cliff ridge lies the dangerous area where the pollution is intensifying. Over 2 years of development, Tentacle Man's established final home had actually already figured out the danger levels of the surrounding areas, and all the strongholds were built to the west, never nearing this place. In these few days, players had been courageously clearing out the pollution monsters, reducing their numbers by a large swath, but after all, these were disorganized monsters, heavy on quantity over quality. What are you going to do? Ethan Dawn was taken aback. Don't tell me you plan to escape into there? His eyes lit up slightly. That appears to be a good idea indeed. Indeed. Su Chi nodded. In many novels, when the protagonist is pursued by a powerful enemy, they would often chance upon some forbidden area where stepping in means certain death, and the enemy would not dare to enter and would give up the pursuit. Then they would sneer, "Looks like this guy is as good as dead. Let's return and report." Ethan Dawn. But often at this point, not only does the protagonist not die upon stepping in, according to data statistics, there is a 32.2% chance they would encounter an unparalleled treasure, 22.1% chance to meet a grandpa, 45.7% chance to bump into a holy daughter afflicted with seductive poison. And then the Dragon King returns. Ethan Dawn, with a dark face. You read too many novels. That's the so-called protagonist's halo. Do you think that's possible? Forget about everything else, just this area. It's risky, but it's not forbidden by any means. Players would definitely step in, and even if Su Buxian escapes and plays dead. Wait a minute. Could he play dead? Exposure every hour. The players would just focus on him. Definitely not possible. Su Qi calmly said, I also think it's nonsense. After all, in this polluted world, all you will find is a holy daughter with syphilis. Ethan Dawn suddenly became alert and looked towards the map. 10 minutes are almost up. But he glanced towards the distance with his eyelids twitching lightly. The other players, they're also down there. It's about time we should get ready. Huh? Ethan Dawn was baffled. Ready for what? Of course. It's time for us to jump down from here. Jump down? This place is freaking hundreds of meters high. Wait, who's us you're talking about? Ethan Dawn looked at Su Qi's faint smile, and his scalp went numb. The next moment, he was grabbed by the shoulders and his eyes widened in horror. Yanked down the cliff, and the players who had arrived below, including Penelope Bloom and Justice Chief, raised their brows as they looked up. Such a high cliff. Seems like that Su Buxian is right above us. Wait. Look, the points on the map finally moved. They're heading towards the cliff's east side. Chase them. The players, adrenaline pumped, excitedly rushed forward. And behind them, the fog gradually revealed the figures of top players, who looked towards the cliff with composed expressions. That guy couldn't possibly think he could escape by entering a dangerous area. Could he? However, staying in place, only moving when everyone almost arrives, seems like he's signaling to us his movement path. Tattooed youth from Hidden Blade smirked. Like the traces he left in that trial, he likes to take risks. But the area he chose is very good. Seems he's well prepared. And at that time, sounds and movements came from above. There's something here. There are writings. After a few seconds, Penelope Bloom and the others looked at the prominent smiley face and writings on the wall in silence. Someone exclaimed in surprise, "The writing is pretty good." Others glanced with slightly flickering eyes, dangerous looks set on the player. Let's pretend I didn't say that. The ghost-faced magician indifferently stared at the writing. The prey seems to enjoy playing games. Tattooed youth calmly said, "All I know is that it's someone who really likes to provoke. Facing so many of us, yet still dares to provoke." The woman in a trench coat beamed with a smile. "This Su Buxian is interesting. Sister here is starting to get intrigued." They almost didn't pause, decisively moving straight towards the dangerous area without hesitation. The ordinary players avoided the brunt of their approach but also crossed the ridge, heading towards the east side area. Penelope Bloom looked at everything in front of her, her brows slightly raised. "What's the matter? Didn't see those two. They should be not far from us." Justice Chief looked around and shook his head. "Although not everyone has arrived, let's all set off immediately." And at that moment, wait a second. The figures of Su Qi and Ethan Dawn appeared in their sight. Su Qi took a few heavy breaths. "Sorry, we just ran into a pollution monster. That's why we are late." Penelope Bloom glanced at the two, her gaze settling on the somewhat pale Ethan Dawn. "It doesn't matter, as long as you're not injured. But you look a bit pale. Have you overused your powers? Do you need some physical strength potions?" Ethan Dawn, he stiffly and unnaturally said, "No need, boss." "That's fine then." Penelope Bloom nodded. "Now, Su Buxian has already entered the dangerous area. We should immediately follow. Leave the fighting to us. Leave the probing and strategy to you two." Ethan Dawn's investigation ability was not the best, but it was still among the top. And Su Qi in the Justice League also had a bit of reputation, and had displayed amazing talents in the previous intense battle with the old monster. "Then I won't be polite." Su Qi frankly smiled. "All eyes on me. Let's set off immediately. I'll lead you in the pursuit of Su Buxian." "All right, Ethan Dawn." Sometimes, Being too perceptive isn't a good thing. Chapter 230 I am the guiding light. They traversed the ridge. The group walked through a world shrouded in a gray haze. In fact, upon reaching this area, those with keen perception all slightly felt a chill. Do you feel it? Penelope Bloom asked with a slight frown. Justice Chief said calmly. There seems to be an unpleasant feeling. This dangerous zone, we have also collected related information. We only know that it is primarily the active area of 7th rank monsters, and there are also treasures that are sought but hard to obtain. Most things in the polluted world are abnormal. After all, to survive amongst countless pollutions, they often possess strange abilities and value. For abnormals, some could even consume directly to enhance their own traits and strength, of course. There is also the risk of mental breakdown. Usually, there are professional methods to handle to minimize these side effects. Penelope Bloom said, if we encounter them, we can collect and hand them over to the abnormal organization. But don't get your hopes up. The players, however, did not wish to become abnormals, and most items could not be placed in the item slot, and what couldn't be equipped could not be taken out of the instance. Since they couldn't directly monetize these items, the only channel was as members of the abnormal organization, Final Home. But the most important thing at the moment is still that Su Buxian. Other people have already started to act. What do you think? Penelope Bloom looked into the fog here. Other players had already scattered. Everyone was probing. And some even began to decisively attack any solitary or less-numbered groups they came across with cruel measures. Su Qi did understand what the top clubs were doing. In addition to searching for him, they were also conveniently driving out ordinary players. After all, this was a battle royale game with slaughter at its core. As for that Su Buxian, I have a few guesses. Su Qi pondered. The top player group is almost entirely confirmed. Most people can mutually confirm each other's identities from previous signs that Su Buxian is not a member of any club, and since he dares to provoke everyone, there is a high chance he is a lone wolf player without any group, but of course, it doesn't eliminate the possibility that he's hidden in other teams. Justice Chief nodded. It's indeed very likely. Ethan Dawn's mouth twitched. What do you mean likely? He's right in front of your face. Brother Chun, why are you always silent? Is it because you naturally don't like to talk? Su Qi looked at him with a faint smile. Ethan Dawn, he was sure he really wanted to expose this guy right now, and it was only out of benevolence that he hadn't shouted it out loud. But after that guy jumped off the cliff, the words he said, Ethan Dawn furrowed his brows and looked toward the distant mist. Ultimately, he sighed. I think this Su Buxian is very cunning, although I don't know what he is planning. It's clear that he's harboring ill intentions. We should try not to take rash actions. Follow the steps of other player teams and wait for the next exposure. We have to be cautious of other teams and the potential dangers lurking in this fog as well. Penelope Bloom nodded. Indeed, there's no need to rush. The group continued searching the vicinity, but mainly, they were all waiting or looking to see if any abnormal figures would appear. However, Su Buxian was not found, but they did encounter numerous sequence monsters. Be careful. Penelope Bloom suddenly drew her long sword, bursting with astonishing spiritual energy, towards 3 monsters that lunged out of the mist. Keep an eye on our surroundings. This was a dangerous area. Players would occasionally encounter disorder within the mist as well as 7th and 8th rank monsters, the latter appearing more frequently than before. Boss, are you all right? Ethan Dawn and Su Qi were leading another team not far away. Justice League members were spaced 100 meters apart in the fog where visibility was low. They could still see each other and were able to communicate promptly with any movement. It's okay. Be careful. Don't go any deeper. It's too complicated here, and there are many dangers. And with many players nearby, everyone cautiously remained on guard, not venturing further in, nor retreating. They were waiting for the exposure, determined to hunt down Su Buxian to the end. So, what are you going to do next? Ethan Dawn used spiritual energy to transmit. There's only 1 minute left until the second exposure, and this time all players are nearby. They won't give you much time to hide. Natural is to speed things up. Speed what up? The pace of the players, they are a bit lost right now. Su Qi spoke softly. After all, I am now a lamp, guiding the way for everyone. Ethan Dawn. Being hunted is being hunted. Can you not make it sound so grand? Anyway, you have to understand something. The one they need to surround and cut off is not me. What do you mean? Su Qi slowly pointed towards the front of the mist. There was a figure, faintly visible, standing there, not an illusion, but wearing a black robe, slightly leaning on a tree branch, arms crossed. It's that. Ethan Dawn was stunned. At that moment, many players also noticed that figure, and before they could react, time slowly came. The map displayed the glowing point, flashing with coordinate information. All players, without any hesitation, opened their maps to check. Penelope Bloom and others looked sharp. So close, nearly overlapping. This means that Su Buxian is nearby. Search quickly. Report back immediately. Any abnormal finds. Chapter 231. Ethan Dawn's eyelids trembled slightly, and he seemed to understand something. At this moment, the many people behind him and the other players nearby were already looking towards that lone figure leaning against a tree. Then, the figure waved at them, seemingly letting out a sinister laugh, and then turned and headed straight into the fog. It almost didn't require him and Su Qi to say anything. The players burst out in unison. Su Buxian? Su Qi even proactively furrowed his brow in question. Wait, have you guys checked with Sister Yangyang? Some players looked towards the tree. Confirmed. There are even markings on this tree trunk saying, "Been here." Looks like it's him then. Su Qi waved a large hand. Brothers, don't fall behind. Let's catch up to him. As he moved, the points of light did too. This made everyone even more certain. Once the herd mentality kicked in, there was no stopping it, whether it was those who saw the chase here or those rushing over from nearby. They all hurried towards this location, spotted the group chasing, noticed the figure, and joined the pursuit, surrounding, encircling, deploying all kinds of abilities. But none could hold onto that figure. Billions of points. Everyone go all out. Don't let him escape. Okay. Even Ethan Dawn was swept up in the chase, the only one aware of the truth, but he just silently watched ahead, the figure in the black robe fleeing. He was somewhat bewildered now. What he could confirm was, the figure definitely wasn't Su Buxian. After all, the real person was right beside him, shouting slogans jubilantly. Moreover, it wasn't any illusion. Many other players had been shuttling around, giving chase, including some familiar faces from top clubs. Their eyes were cold. They were nearby but came later, and now they were deep in the herd behavior, unhesitatingly deploying their troops for encircling and eradication. Among them were naturally those with psychic professions, able to tell almost instantly if the other was an illusion. Of course, the most important thing was, there were actual footprints on the ground. Moreover, players had surrounded and attacked from the sides, even engaging in close combat with the figure who showcased formidable strength, blocking all attacks and even kicking away a player who desperately tried to intercept. Ethan Dawn looked towards Su Qi. This guy has such a strong partner? And 10 minutes passed quickly. The group had lost the light points but relentlessly chased the figure, which hadn't yet escaped their view. However, after chasing for a while longer, the figure suddenly dived into the fog and disappeared. They continued the chase, only to find the path ahead gradually starting to fork, obviously leading in different directions. Someone cursed softly, "Damn! We let him escape. Even the top players can't catch up. One person leading us all on." Hidden Blade Youth, face dark as thunder. "Shut up!" His voice carried a chill. The woman in the trench coat, smoking a cigarette, spoke between red lips. "That Su Buxian really is slippery like an eel. What do you all want to do next?" The tattooed youth calmly stated. "We seem to truly be led into dangerous territory." The ghost-faced magician spoke gravely. "Of course, split into 2 groups. Keep chasing. Wait. Everyone, hear me out." Su Qi's voice made everyone look towards him. Many paused for a moment, their impressions of him deep as hundreds had participated in the killing of the old monster, recognizing Su Chi. There are many footprints on the road. This area ahead could have dangerous sequence monsters. Su Buxian is too smart to head there rashly. The opponent is also good at hiding and concealing his presence. He might be observing us from nearby right now. Su Chi calmly stated, I suggest everyone stick together in a team, avoid any isolated actions, focus on cutting off the route of retreat and spread out to search the nearby area, but be careful not to stray too far. After all, there are only 50 minutes. It would be best if we could share information among us and directly join forces to intercept him before the next exposure. His tone was resonant and forceful, conveying clear reasoning that made it difficult for anyone to refuse his logical suggestion. That could work. Hidden Blade squinted his eyes. After all, there's only so much time to cut off his retreat, which will leave him no choice but to move forward. When the area becomes more dangerous, he will naturally stop in his tracks, afraid to go further. By now, they had already encountered numerous monsters of 7th rank and even 7th rank, but actually, with the large number of players, the sea of people simply surrounded and killed these monsters to death. Monsters of 6th rank, being dominators of a certain territory, were generally sparse in number and hard to come across. Ethan Dawn listened silently as Su Chi commanded, deployed, and analyzed, his silence like the rain in July. This guy, really not acting like a human. When the players started to move, Ethan Dawn couldn't help but whisper, Are you delaying the time?
No.
Su Chi glanced at him and softly said, I've told you, I am now in the role of the guider, leading them to the safest places. What do you mean? Su Chi looked back towards the dark and misty fog. On the previous route, there were at least 2 territories of 6th rank monsters that I helped them avoid. However, the road ahead is not easy. I hope they don't fall behind. Ethan Dawn? What are you doing? At this moment, the players also noticed the mist gradually thickening around them. The Justice League wasn't far away, sticking together to prevent some clubs from launching stealth attacks. Penelope Bloom frowned slightly and spoke in a grave tone. Don't you find it strange? This is supposed to be a dangerous area. I thought it would be some desolate area where no bird dares to shit. But she picked up a road sign from the ground. It seemed to have flown over from somewhere, still bearing some legible words, though it was badly damaged. Justice Chief furrowed his brow. Are there still signs of a city up ahead? Could it be a place where the abnormal organization once stayed? But nobody has ever mentioned this. You see, although Final Home and all other strongholds are teeming with abnormalities from different worlds, many of the buildings are actually newly constructed, and no information about this area had been gathered before. Many abnormalities know nothing about this place. Su Chi silently looked at the sign, his gaze slowly moving forward, continuing towards the distant lands ahead. Naturally, were Tentacle Man and the same city where he had first encountered the ancient god's heart. The massive hole that appeared when he met the traveling merchant was also located at a central point in that city. However, that was not the most important thing. The most important thing, Su Chi stared into the distance at the huge, deep red exclamation mark that penetrated the sky dome, flickering faintly, revealing the information inside. Away from all destruction, there are 25 hours left. Initially, when he first saw this deep red exclamation mark and its message, Su Chi knew something significant was about to happen in this world. And by all destruction, it didn't just mean the nearby area or the abnormal organization. It was the entire world. This deep red color and the terrifyingly large exclamation mark symbolized extreme danger. Of course, that was just one of the reasons, the most important being, Su Chi waited for several days, but the Paradise system proceeded as usual with its ranking battles and mainline tasks. Even the elimination point match ending time was after the destruction alert. Meaning, this force also went unnoticed by the Paradise system. That was rather intriguing. For other players, this situation might be a first encounter. But not for Su Chi. He had extensive work experience. He instantly knew what it was related to. Su Chi looked at the huge red exclamation mark and murmured softly, "Divine." Chapter 232 Warning. Warning from the Paradise System. According to Su Chi's various experiences, whenever the Paradise System loses control, it means that the power of the divine has appeared. Previous system collapses or issues that the Paradise intelligence couldn't handle were all because of this. Although it doesn't specify what to do or what rewards will be given. But since an exclamation mark is given, it means unpredictable events are happening. So naturally, I have to bring my brothers to see the world. The 4 words, destruction of the world, carry a significant weight. If it were just about destroying the world, so be it. But even though this world had already become a dung pit, there were still people struggling in it, trying to get out. Moreover, regardless of other players, once such destruction erupted, Su Chi believed the Paradise power would necessarily be interrupted forcefully. Involving so many people, even higher powers of the Paradise might come. What would happen then is hard to tell. It's a bit troublesome, but no big problem. Su Chi withdrew his gaze. The place with the deep red exclamation mark was still a long distance away from here. It would take a while to reach that area, and after entering this dangerous area, the dangerous aura around was gradually increasing. And at this moment, Su Chi slowly stretched out his palm. A totem was forming at its center. Its pattern was not unfamiliar to him, featuring a pupil and a ring of twisted flames. Evil God Totem. Of course, this was just a drawn item, not like a branded tattoo. Previously, cultists, through the totem, would mark themselves as followers of the great evil god and could also pray to the black shadow in the totem for power. So, after having trained Gon 1 and 2 black shadows, Su Chi also experimented this time. He could now summon Gon 1 Sui simultaneously, but each time required spirit coins or pollutants and other energy items. Energy consumption ending meant the summoning would end, and just now, that figure was a Gon following his command, impersonating Su Buxian, drawing everyone's attention. Gon 1 Chui. Report the situation. Black fog clearly had ripples forming words. It was a series of information about the roads in the area ahead, about high-sequence monsters and various dangerous and bizarre places. The closer to the deep red exclamation mark, the more dangers there were. Fortunately, Gon 1 Sui's 3 shadows, being in it, felt like flat ground. After all, the monsters were entirely polluted beings, and those 3 were purely black fog power. In terms of lineage, these 3 were the noble ones. Of course, Su Chi was a generous person. He didn't mind the original form of Gon 1 Sui. This time, I especially commend a Gon. A great improvement in acting skills. Military training is indeed effective. Gon. Why can't I feel happy about this? The so-called military training included a variety of activities, with acting taking up a significant part. But Su Chi looked at their reports, his eyes somewhat peculiar. According to their probe, there are almost 100 7th rank monsters straight ahead, and even deeper inside, there is an extremely terrifying aura, suspected to contain many 6th rank pollution monsters. They didn't dare to enter rashly. Although the 3 shadows were all only of 7th rank strength, if they joined forces, they could borrow abyss power. Although the duration was short, they would still have no problem trying their hands against 7th rank. At this moment, even they felt fear about the existence. If it is not from lineage, then it indicates there's a stronger existence far surpassing them. Let's not even talk about the 6th rank. Just the fact that there are so many 7th rank monsters. Previously on the Western Ridge, which is where the final home was located, over 300 players together besieged a 7th rank monster, which already proved how powerful the 7th rank was. Although that human-faced old monster had a special ability to absorb the fear of the public, the more people there were, the greater the advantage for it, but the higher the sequence's ability, the harder it is to break its rules. Not to mention the existence of 6th rank. After all, the gulf between sequences will exponentially widen, creating a vast gap, and 6th rank pollution monster's existence is already a colossal being that players cannot confront by simply besieging. However, one thing that surprises me, Su Chi excelled in approaching both macro and micro perspectives, seeing through the surface of events to their essence. The 7th rank monsters are so concentrated, including the deeper inside creatures, all seem to be entrenched here, rather than calling it a nest. It's more like they are guarding something at the very center. Or, Su Qi looked towards the distant deep red exclamation mark. Surrounding something. Otherwise, these terrifying monsters sweeping into action. Final Home simply would have no means to resist. At this moment, players were jointly battling or searching the area for some pollutants, bizarre plant fruits, etc. Although they bypassed the 7th rank territory, in reality, the chaotic and low-sequence monsters appearing here were many, more than 10 times more than before. Only by reaching the center can we know everything. Next, every exposure. Su Qi was leading everyone along the safe zones towards the inside, commanding, barely several times almost leaving Su Buxian behind, even causing fatal injuries, various perilous situations. Though unfortunate, just missing by a little, but the people were already excited in their gazes. Chapter 233. Hidden Blade's young man gazed at the knife in his hand, the cold light shimmering as he gently spoke. That Su Buxian has already been seriously injured. His movements have clearly slowed down, affected. Penelope Bloom also spoke intently. A desperate escape approaching its limit. What follows is likely the final moment. The ghost-faced magician, one hand propping up the side of his mask, said calmly. Looks like he can't run away this time. Ethan Dawn silently watched these top-ranked club superplayers, including his own boss. He felt no excitement, only melancholy. He used to think they were all dangerous figures, all ranking at the very top. Even in the weakest fantasy district, their prestige was diminished, but they were still super players from top-ranked clubs. To mix with his boss within their circle, to broaden his horizons, to learn from their experience. But now, big brothers, what are you talking about? Open your eyes. Werewolf kills. The damned werewolf's directing operations. Something's not right. Justice Chief indeed was a vigilant man, but his doubts were about the surroundings. Even though we ventured deep into the danger zone, aside from low-sequence monsters, we haven't encountered anything significantly dangerous, like a 7th rank being, and now that we're here, the monsters seem to have vanished into thin air. Could the intelligence here be wrong? Once they had arrived here, they found no 7th or 8th rank. Not even sequence monsters appeared on the journey, as if they had disappeared. 2 possibilities, the woman in the trench coat said, tapping her lighter and lighting a cigarette. One is an erroneous piece of information leading Su Buxian into his own trap, mired in a quagmire. The other possibility signifies that this place is even more dangerous because the truly terrifying beings. Naturally, no bird nor beast would dare come close. The tattooed youth said calmly, no matter the danger, those with ability will survive, and those without will turn to dust. They were all too aware that Su Buxian was leading them into a danger zone. But just like gambling, everyone had already invested too much to consider giving up now. It seems that everyone here understands the situation. Su Qi looked at the people around him, also keeping an eye on the exposure time on the map. However, the understanding isn't very thorough. They knew it was a danger zone, but what they didn't know was, right at this moment, they had all passed through an area rife with 7th rank pollution monsters, yet, remarkably, they hadn't encountered a single 7th rank monster. Apart from the information from Ganwonsue, Su Qi had also seen numerous question marks indicating a successful evasion of all these threats. And ahead lay the true terror Ganwonsue was unable to probe, and it was only a few thousand meters away from the deep red exclamation point. The exposure time is about to be up. The countdown had appeared on the map, and everyone was awaiting the light spot to be revealed. The crowd was rubbing their hands together in eagerness, preparing to take down Su Buxian for good this time, while Su Qi fixated on the deep red exclamation point, preparing for the strong scent of danger he had already sensed. Just then, the light spot on the map failed to be exposed. Instead, a system pop-up appeared in the vision of all the players. Warning! All players in the 2,137,897th pollution instance. Please evacuate this area immediately. The intense red frame and the urgent tone of the warning caused everyone's expressions to briefly freeze. What's going on? I'm not sure. First time I've seen this. Su Qi raised an eyebrow. His guess had been correct. Paradise System had indeed detected an extraordinary power. But at this moment, the emergence of a warning made many ordinary players feel unsettled. Yet they hesitated. After all, they had come all this way. They were only a step away from Su Buxian, and leaving now would be to abandon all their progress. But Penelope Bloom and others had a slight shift in their gaze, a hint of surprise in their expressions. Although they had never encountered a Paradise Warning event before, their seniors and adults back home all came from Paradise and knew more than other ordinary players. This included the ghost-faced magician, whose face now showed shifting shadows, harboring thoughts of retreat. I think we should pull back. Such a warning suggests an extraordinary danger. It's not worth it for just one Su Buxian. Although losing his hundreds of millions of points is regrettable, there's no helping it. Their eyes showed caution and a sliver of unease. Those elders and adults of the powers in Paradise had sternly warned everyone. In such a situation, they must immediately follow Paradise's instructions. The harshness of days past had not yet faded. They dared not take the risk. After all, they didn't know what price might be paid. And Su Qi? Bold. What are you trying to do? I painstakingly led you all safely here. Can you bear to watch me venture alone? Su Qi cajoled them. I think we're so close. Would it not be a pity to give up now? Su Buxian must have seen this message too. He probably won't dare go deeper. As long as we can take him on the outskirts, then everything will be resolved.
No.
Penelope Bloom looked at him seriously and shook her head. Brother Yang, you're an ordinary player. You don't know the situation. But you must trust me, we have to leave this time. Otherwise, something unpredictable might occur. I know the situation, because I believe that unity is strength. Only together can we break through the hardships. Chapter 234. Penelope Bloom sternly said. And now that we're leaving, even if fighting breaks out, the sheriff, Ashao, and we will all protect you. Besides being core members of the Justice League, there are clear benefits from this sunny and cheerful big boy's command throughout the journey, and his judgments on routes had helped them reach this point. Given those past promises combined with this favor, he naturally had to fulfill it. Ethan Dawn almost cried. Boss, seriously, I'm dying. Being able to interact with an inside tester like Boss Penelope Bloom was purely by accident in an instance. I was influenced by the boss's righteousness, became friends with him, and with decent talent, I became a formal member of his power. He swore to himself that he must boost the boss to the top of the ranked battles. Although Boss ranked second in the ranked battles, Ethan Dawn himself had also quietly made a lot of efforts, even if he never let Penelope Bloom know about them. Let's go, Su Buxian. At this moment, Ethan Dawn solemnly communicated with Su Qi through spiritual energy. I've been hiding this partly because of our friendship and also because of what you told me before, that the boss would face lethal danger. There's almost a 99% chance he might die in this instance, possibly even missing the ranked matches. The danger ahead is now clear. It's time to leave. Su Qi calmly said. We can't leave at all on our way here. There were probably 107th rank terrifying monsters. Ethan Dawn widened his eyes. But I didn't see a single one. I told you, I am your great guide. Su Qi said, unless you follow the previous route back exactly as we came, or let me command again, the chances of not disturbing the 7th rank monsters are roughly 1.2%. Of course, like a chain reaction, once one 7th rank monster is disturbed, coupled with the large noises of players fighting, it will inevitably attract other 7th rank monsters, and the likelihood of surviving, you do the math. Ethan Dawn's eyes shifted slightly, looking at Su Qi with a trace of fear in his eyes. What kind of person was this, leading a group of players through such terrifying and dangerous places, mentioning all these lethal threats so lightly, as if he had planned everything, dragging everyone down with him. You said earlier, my boss might face lethal dangers. Ethan Dawn solemnly looked around. Now I realize you brought this on us. Su Chi. How can you tarnish someone's reputation out of thin air? This guy sure thinks ahead. That statement of mine was the truth after all. The countdown to destruction, including this world, naturally also includes players. Paradise had never realized it until the eruption, still unclear about what would happen. In any case, during public testing, the Paradise system's authority and level seemed not to be high. After all, how could a player during public testing encounter divine beings, not to mention a 7th rank? Players were already hooting and hollering, let alone stronger entities. Most of the system's strength seemed to be concentrated in the true Paradise. All right, drop that complex look. I'm not some big villain, obviously, a protagonist. Su Chi calmly said, I just recently helped some kids do their homework while their parents weren't home. He was referring to Tentacle Man and Ah Ling, who, with his help, had significantly increased Paradise's performance. Ethan Dawn fell silent. Trust this guy? Yeah, right, only believe a fraction of what he says. Besides, there's no use talking about this now. Su Chi's gaze shifted to the rear. In just the past few minutes, quite a few players have slipped away, but at the same time have also drawn the nearby 7th rank monsters over. Look, they've arrived. Ethan Dawn widened his eyes, gazing into the fog behind where he could faintly make out a massive form. The monster, wielding a giant axe, was looking over with fiery red eyes, causing many players to look alarmed. That quickly? I told you. This fog is filled with deadly traps, easily disturbed. The 7th rank monsters had specific patterns of movement, a piece of information obtained through the probing of Ganwansue and 2 others. It seemed to be patrolling, but actually appeared to be related to some kind of ritual. Even Su Chi had to spend dozens of minutes thinking about the route forward, finding a loophole, taking 10 minutes to rush everyone forward. Let alone the players now wishing to retreat. Ethan Dawn's expression trembled. Wait, is this why you didn't let everyone leave? Because, as per what you just said, it would trigger a series of chain reactions attracting the monsters around us? Congratulations, you've started thinking. Congratulations, my ass. Aren't we doomed either way? Pretty much, as both moving forward and staying here don't offer much hope of survival. And the only way out. Su Chi looked towards the deep red exclamation mark. Though the fog obscured most of the visible area, he could faintly see the outlines of a shattered city. Lies ahead. His words held a double meaning, not only representing the current situation but also hinting at the chance that lay in the countdown to destruction. So, after all this detour, we still have to step into the place warned by the system. Ethan Dawn looked uneasily forward, muttering, It seems it was meant to be. Bullshit meant to be. Ethan Dawn glared. If other people didn't enter here, none of this would have happened, right? Chapter 235. The temptation of hundreds of millions of points. Do you think you... And they won't come. Su Chi glanced at him. Although the players were unaware of the impending destruction, and the Paradise system had not sensed it, Su Chi naturally had to do something and step into this place. Of course, players would surely pursue him due to exposure. Instead of letting them dive into this hazardous zone like moths to a flame, better to lead them himself, and help himself obtain the rewards of the deep red exclamation mark. Ah no, it was to prevent the destruction of Final Home and this world and to take up one's responsibility. After all, unity is wonderful. At this moment, faced with the sudden appearance of a 7th rank monster, the hordes of players did not falter. They burst into combat, unleashing copious amounts of strength onto the body of the 7th rank monster. This monster simply had high health and high attack. In reality, its abilities were less troublesome than those of a humanoid monster. Moreover, with a much larger number of players now than before, this giant axe-wielding monster, amidst the disintegration of flesh and blood, hammered out an axe attack, and only after a thunderous crash did it fall. The players showed elation, and the first thing they did was not to continue fleeing but to gaze at their increased points and then excitedly scramble over the body of the giant axe monster. Different monsters have different abilities, and thus, different strengths. And just as with monsters, among the players, the top-notch guys are indeed sharp. Su Chi looked towards the ghost-faced magician and others. Their expressions were grave as they looked around and growled. Stop fighting over it. Be careful. There are more monsters. And at that moment, whether it was because of the recent commotion or the touch of the ritual, in the fog behind them, numerous figures were approaching with heavy steps. Just a glance in that direction made the players sweat profusely, and their eyes split wide open. 7th rank monsters? So many. They had only just fought, and against such terrible monsters, they had almost no other way of overcoming them aside from besieging them. And now, over a dozen silhouettes of 7th rank monsters emerged from the fog, appearing slowly within everyone's sight, giving everyone a tingling scalp and trembling bodies. What should we do? Run, what else can we do? But can we even escape? The 7th rank monsters, they were expressionless, like corpses, yet the abilities in their hands were already sending out ripples and waves, and the surrounding fog grew thicker, filled with the scent of blood. They seemed to be sealing off this area, not allowing the prey within to have any chance of escape. The oppressive atmosphere brought by the horror and the number of over a dozen monsters made everyone feel a lethal threat and fear. Ethan Dawn looked anxiously at the scene. It seems the surroundings have twisted. Su Buxian, didn't you say there was a way out? Say something. Don't worry. They are not fools. The fire is already at their feet. They will naturally run. And the first to flee towards the Paradise Warning area were the ordinary players. Go! We can only run forward. What about the warning? We're about to explode now. Who cares about the warning? And like the ghost-faced magician and others who were still hesitating with uncertain faces, in the end, they just gritted their teeth and headed towards the warning area. Su Chi was neither hurried nor slow. See, I told you it was fate. Ethan Dawn's mouth hung open, not knowing what to say, but his look towards Su Chi grew more horrified as if he felt that from the very beginning. Everything was set up just so, yet, despite being filled with many variables, this guy pulled the string straight as if he controlled everything. Don't just stand there zoning out, Penelope Bloom bellowed. Keep up with everyone else. Run into it. The road behind was blocked, and they had no choice but to enter the forbidden zone. Let's go, Su Chi said calmly as he followed. The closer he got, the more he understood the information he saw. Whether it was that deep red exclamation mark, or many of the creatures in this instance world, which are of high sequence, are all deeply connected. This kind of connection had been speculated in the past to possibly be about protection or entrapment. But now Su Chi could confirm. They were part of a ritual. The entire hazardous area, over 107th rank monsters, were maintaining some sort of vast ritual, but at the same time, they were also extremely fearful of the existence at the center. None of the 7th rank monsters dared to step forward. As long as they escaped to a specific range, they would no longer follow, and whether it was safe or not didn't matter anymore. And at that moment, warning! Another warning! All players, please stop immediately and leave the area. Do not proceed forward. Such warning messages also popped up before every player again. Can you kind of see what the situation is right now? Looking back means death, brother. Stop popping up messages. You're affecting my escape. Over a dozen 7th rank monsters were relentlessly pursuing them. And in the surrounding fog, it seemed there were more monsters growling, ready to encircle and block them off. Sinister, twisted, and terrifying presences continued to assail them. How long do we have to run to be safe? Ethan Dawn roared, looking at Su Chi. Su Chi looked at him oddly. Do you really think I'm omnipotent or something? Such things. He paused. I actually do know. Damn it. See the city. Get into the urban area, and they won't follow anymore. Although the city's outline could be seen from afar, in reality, the distance to run there was still vast. Boom, boom, boom. When the 7th rank monsters began their pursuit, the spectacle was immense. Their large bodies, with strange hissing, were not fast, but they could cover a distance in a few steps that would take players dozens. Their physical strength varied, but the real threat was still their traits. The bizarre powers and various strange and terrifying items on their bodies presented an endless pressure to the players. The players ran frantically, panting and gasping, but they dared not stop. It could only be said that everyone was after Subushien, but anyone could become Subushien. And at that moment, no one was paying attention to the system pop-ups. No one noticed that the system's power was gradually weakening under some influence. The pop-ups were slowly becoming fainter. More importantly, the force hiding the identity IDs of all players was also gradually dissipating step by step as they approached the dilapidated city. Chapter 236. Getting squeezed by open box. The decrepit road, overgrown with various mosses and weeds, stretched to the end, leading to that city, long dead without knowing for how long. Silence, strangeness, and danger flowed within it. If one looked closely, it was clear to see that all the surrounding fog abruptly ceased upon nearing this city, forming instead a foggy quarantine zone. Dark green twists undulated in the air like ripples, enveloping the entire city in a bizarre and unnatural aura that seemed omnipresent. But right now, the players had no time to concern themselves with these things. Over a dozen 7th-rank monsters, like 10 thunderous bulldozers, everyone could only charge forward, afraid to fall behind. Su Chi was among the crowd, surveying everything before him. He could almost confirm it now. This dead city was the place where he had encountered Tentacle Man before, and where he had found the ancient god's heart and met the traveling merchant. After his departure, it seemed something had happened here, and for some unknown reason, Tentacle Man had left. And there was something else. Su Chi raised his head to the sky above the city. The entire sky was enveloped by a huge vortex of black fog, obscuring whatever lay within, but the sight was all too familiar. At the beginning of the instance, Su Chi had been on a plane in the ordinary world when he experienced the so-called accident. From the ordinary world, he had traveled through chaotic currents to this place. Is this the origin of everything? He had his speculations, but refrained from jumping to conclusions. One had to see to believe, and presumptions could only lead to bias. And at this moment, as the players were about to step into that area, the dozen or so sequence monsters seemed to quicken their pace, hammering the ground as they roared. Many of the trailing ordinary players were directly reduced to 0 life points and carried off, their burst of spiritual energy kicking up clouds of dust that surged towards the others. The gruesome sight of sudden violent death made all the players even more panic-stricken and fearful. Run! Su Chi also witnessed this scene, and what he knew for certain was that the power of paradise had been affected, unable to produce any prompts now. But when players were killed just now, it also triggered the return mechanism. It looks like it's similar to the situation at that auction before. Even if paradise is affected, the players themselves still have a protective mechanism that allows them to return, a double insurance. Su Chi understood. To know, during the encounter with the juvenile form of the Master of Destruction, this double mechanism had not appeared, nearly rendering him unable to leave that world. And after that instance ended, paradise had shut itself in for a whole day of reflection, undergoing a major update. Aside from some content, it seemed more protective mechanisms for players were implemented. The people pierced through the vague fog, and at last, they stepped into the city. However, as soon as they entered, everyone shuddered, feeling an inexplicable anxiety. But many were too preoccupied to care and turned back to look. Wait! They've stopped. They haven't stepped in here. What's going on? The warning land given by the system, is it a place even they are afraid and wary of? No matter what, at least we're still alive. Many ordinary players gasped for air, regaining their physical strength. Even after completing their job change and entering the sequence, it did not mean their strength had suddenly increased dramatically. After all, each path had different focal points. The body was still the same, reliant on the use of spiritual energy and the burst of traits. Just like some anime, where they cultivate until their hands clasp together, bursting with strength to move mountains and fill seas, but a stab through the heart still meant death. High offense, low defense, that was the case. Ethan Dawn also gasped for air, looking at the place with surprise. They're not coming in? No, they fear and dread everything about this place and believe that by entering, we are on a path to die, so don't worry, we are safe. Ethan Dawn's voice trembled. Why can't I sense even a hint of safety right now? Those dozen 7th rank monsters, with those creepy eyes, stared at the many players before withdrawing expressionlessly, step by step to a spot slightly away from the city, but not leaving entirely, their massive bodies fading in and out of sight in the fog. As if they were guarding this place. They are guarding the way back. It seems we can't return the way we came. We have to look for another way. And at this moment, people began to actually focus on the streets of the city before them. Apart from looking a bit run down, it doesn't seem any different. Even the fog has dissipated. But I have a bad feeling. This place is a hazard area, constantly warned about by the system. Someone suddenly raised an eyebrow. Wait, there seems to be something in the sky. Instinctively, everyone looked up, and the terrifyingly twisted dense vortex, although seemingly distant, appeared to suck away the attention of the crowd. Just with a single glance, everyone was startled, hastily withdrawing their gazes in fear. Penelope Bloom's eyelids twitched as he looked at Justice Chief. My spiritual power has taken damage. Justice Chief spoke solemnly. Same here. The greatest spiritual pollution in the polluted world was actually pervasive everywhere, but after the player's job change, infusing spiritual energy for the defense granted resilience to their spiritual attribute. In other words, as long as the spiritual pollution didn't exceed the threshold, they wouldn't directly lose spiritual power. The two factors being, one was spiritual energy and the other was the spiritual attribute itself. Chapter 237. Numerous players now seem to have lost their spiritual power, their faces slightly pale. Damn! Don't look up. Just one glance and it reduced my total spiritual power by 1/10. Everyone, don't look up. Ghost-faced magician and others immediately spoke in low voices, stopping those who hadn't yet looked. Damn it! Ethan Dawn's face also looked unpleasant. He had evidently looked up as well. What on earth is that thing? I actually lost 37 points of spiritual power. His profession's special ability was probe, and spiritual attribute was one of his main abilities. Along with spiritual energy, his resilience to spiritual power, resistance to spiritual pollution, impacts, and more were relatively higher compared to others. Su Buxian, you? He turned to Su Qi, intending to ask about Su Qi's condition. Then seeing Su Qi still looking up, he suddenly widened his eyes. You're still looking? The scenery is like that. It looks different from the outside than from inside. Different angles produce different beauties, Su Qi said lightly while looking at the black fog vortex in the sky. From the outside, he actually hadn't found much of value. But stepping in here, it was clear. The entire city seemed to be connected with the black fog vortex above. The surrounding space was filled with eerie twists, and if one carefully studied the center of that black fog vortex, one could even see the familiar turbulence. This also confirmed his previous guesses. As for whether looking for so long would reduce spiritual power, it would. About 1 point every 10 seconds, negligible. Anyway, this isn't a good sign. I have a premonition that so-called destruction is related to the black fog vortex above our heads. Su Qi said softly. And now in this city, I also probably know something. Brother Su. Ethan Dawn interrupted suddenly, his tone somewhat trembling. I've said it many times. Call me by my official title at work. It's not that. Ethan Dawn said. You've been open-boxed. Su Qi's eyelids twitched slightly. Then he noticed a large group of people turning their gaze silently toward him. He looked at Ethan Dawn's conspicuously displayed ID name. Then, he silently shifted his gaze back to the crowd. The other players also lost their disguise, exposing various ID identities. The crowd surprisingly harbored about 20 members of the Oat Club, who had managed to blend into the ranking battles. The Oat Club was terrifying to this extent. However, It seemed like none of that mattered now, as everyone's gaze gathered on him at his own head. Facing so many looks, Su Chi said, "Brother Chun, they are all looking at you." Ethan Dawn almost cursed. "Are they looking at me? Are you unaware of yourself?" "My boss is calling me. I have to go first," Ethan Dawn said, intending to escape first. Although this place was very dangerous, he felt staying here was even more damn dangerous. "You should stay," Su Chi lightly said. "Your boss is also looking at you with a complex, unusual gaze." Ethan Dawn saw Penelope Bloom's somewhat shocked and incredulous expression. He wanted to cry but had no tears. "I'm not with this guy. Su Buxian." Someone gently uttered these 3 words. It was the young man from Hidden Blade. He stared hard at Su Chi. "So it turns out it was all a deception. The real Su Buxian is you. Su Chi. Don't jump to conclusions. You know there are many people with the same name in this world." Ghost-faced magician also frowned deeply, his voice as low as it could go. "No wonder I always said that shadow didn't seem right. Not like a living person." The woman in a trench coat bit her red lips. "Commanding the whole way, leading everyone to chase here. Guy, it seems we were all played by you." Su Chi. "You can't say that, the facts show." It was 2 people. Ethan Dawn was also involved. Ethan Dawn yelled, "I am damn innocent." Justice Chief sighed slightly. "Didn't expect it to be like this. No wonder every point of light was unusually close to us. I feel very conflicted." "You're all talking among yourselves? Ignoring others, huh?" Su Chi said softly. "Isn't that a bit rude?" Having been opened by Paradise himself, he could foresee that the power of Paradise would vanish upon stepping into this area. But he was surprised that the previous dual mechanism had left some information in the players' bodies, essentially offering protection even offline. "What are you trying to say?" The tattooed youth calmly looked at Su Chi. "You really think you still have a chance to argue?" At this moment, numerous players already had a cold glint flashing over them, slightly reflecting into Su Chi's vision. It was clear that some players had already drawn their weapons. Even though they had now entered the so-called dangerous forbidden area, the true Su Buxian had already appeared in everyone's line of sight, so sudden and unexpected that it caught everyone off guard, making them disregard the eerie area around them and eager to seize the hundreds of millions of points from Su Buxian. Su Chi watched everyone's movements, raising his finger. "There's just one thing I want to say. When you start making a move, something bad is going to happen." The players were indignant. "How dare you threaten us? Let's do it." When ordinary players began to unleash their skill strength towards Su Chi, other top clubs, including Penelope Bloom and others, all stood calmly in place, even stopping their own people. The next moment, boom! The sky seemed to suck in wildly. The ordinary players who had just released bursts of spiritual energy suddenly trembled in the face, and their weapons, still flickering with a dangerous aura, instantly dimmed, their bodies becoming limp and weak as if a succubus had sucked out their life force, causing them to hit the ground. "What's going on? Why don't I have any strength left? Help! I feel like the strength in my body is being sucked out. Damn! It sucks more than my wife." "You have a problem. I told you not to make a move." Su Chi looked gently at the crowd. "The second rule of the City of Death. Do not use any energy-related items, or it will be absorbed." Ethan Dawn was taken aback. "Wait, what rule? And why is it the second one?" "Because this city is full of untouchable taboos. Once violated, punishment will ensue." Su Chi pointed above. "The first rule is, do not look up." Su Chi looked toward the ghost-faced magician and others who seemed a bit grim. "You see how shrewd they are? They noticed it quite early." Their eyes were solemn. Indeed, from the moment they entered here, they hadn't taken it lightly, being super rookies raised by top clubs and naturally different from ordinary people. Paradise had given such a warning, and now the power of Paradise had also lost its effect. So, from the beginning, they had already been collecting various kinds of information and also discovered the phenomenon of strength being sucked out, but they were not very clear, so they held their positions and did not move. As expected, Those who had burst out with strength faced a severe backlash. But everyone looked at Su Buxian, not expecting this guy before them to be so clear and aware. Indeed, it seems that energy cannot be unleashed, including equipment abilities and skills, but if you don't use those and just use cold weapons to hack, we can still attack you, Ethan Dawn said, now lowering his head to ponder. Su Chi glanced at him. Which side are you on? Ethan Dawn said ruefully. Sorry. Wait. He widened his eyes. Why am I apologizing? I'm not on your side. You're from the Justice League. I'm also from the Justice League. We are all partners targeting Su Buxian, aren't we? Mention that again and I'll kill myself. Penelope Bloom. He forgave Ethan Dawn for hiding things from himself, seeing that his mental state also seemed a bit tortured. While he was about to speak, a voice slowly emerged behind everyone. Can you help me? Chapter 238. Yellow-Robed Master. Penelope Bloom had originally wanted to speak up, not only to defend Su Chi but also to assess the current situation. This city, from the moment they entered, had exuded a bone-chilling coldness, as if dangers lurked all around and behind them, causing an unsettling dread. Now, the Paradise system had vanished, and the city had become even more bizarre. Instead of competing for the uncertain prize of 100 million points, everyone should consider escaping from this city, this region. It was not only him feeling and thinking this. Players from other top clubs also had an extremely grave expression, not relaxing in the slightest. They trusted their instincts, their subconscious judgments. And then, at that moment, behind every person, by everyone's ears, a voice suddenly arose. Can you help me? The voice was genderless, sounding as if someone had scorched their throat with fire and nails, twisted, hoarse, and low, an intonation that did not seem human. Everyone stiffened, their eyes bloodshot. It was like being trapped in a nightmare, with consciousness being crushed by 99%, leaving only a fraction clear, feeling as if an infinite weight suffocated them. It grew dark and dim as if drowning in this horrific nightmare. After that sentence was spoken, everyone seemed to awaken from the dream. Faces turned extremely pale. Some even staggered, unable to support their bodies, and sat on the ground. What's going on? Is someone speaking behind us? They felt as if someone was standing behind them, that unsettling fear chilling everyone to the bone. But turning around with pale faces, they saw nothing. Why did I hear someone asking for help? You heard it too. Yes. And it was incredibly creepy and unsettling. Someone panted heavily. I felt like my heart and consciousness were about to stop. All players realized it wasn't just them hearing it, which brought a bit of sense back amidst immense fear. This horrifying situation, it's not the strange that frightens, but the fear of being alone in it. You heard it too? Yes. Ghost-faced magician and others looked extremely grim and disturbed. At the moment that voice had sounded, they felt as if a terrifying force had targeted them. The deadly chill instantly expanding by hundreds, thousands of times, as if stuck in quicksand, unable to escape. Even as they tried to adjust their mindset, their bodies trembled uncontrollably. Moreover, they had immediately activated their investigation skill, but there were no traces, nothing existed behind them. Ethan Dawn, pale-faced, trembled. What exactly is this voice? Why does it need help? Su Chi didn't answer, but pondered. So, the voice you just heard was asking for help? Ethan Dawn widened his eyes, looking at Su Chi. You didn't hear it? Well, it's like this. Su Chi paused, then pulled out an old camera. While you guys were shivering and panicking just now, I was taking your photos. Ethan Dawn was full of questions. Everyone had just been caught in some horrific, bizarre incident, and you were unaffected. And what's more important, when you noticed something was wrong with everyone, shouldn't you have been observing urgently, seriously, and gravely? And you were actually taking photos. Ladies and gentlemen, Penelope Bloom spoke gravely. The voice just now was extremely strange and frightening. The information from the Paradise system has also disappeared. Everything is declaring that this city is deadly and dangerous. Right now, the most pressing matter is to find a way to leave here. Leave. Hidden Blade's young man Zero looked somber. It's not that simple. Indeed, the woman in the trench coat, Luna Fern, also trembled slightly as she held her cigarette, looking around. The way back, not only is it guarded by a 7th-rank monster, but have you noticed? The streets around us are subtly changing. The Twisted has enveloped the entire city. Tattooed youth, Xuanwu, spoke gravely. Apart from that voice just now, dangers likely lurk everywhere. Su Qi was not new to such experiences, having seen such twisted spaces in Linyuan land before. However, he now focused on the names of these players. With the power of the paradise dissipated, everyone's IDs had been exposed. The few who had just spoken were among the top 10 in the fantasy rankings, but if placed in the previous overall rankings, they were outside the top 100. Of course, they were also considered super rookies, players with great strength and potential, given the fierce competition among too many players globally, making even the top 1,000 noteworthy talents. And the highest, he looked at Ghost-Faced Magician, ranked 47th in the overall leaderboard. At that moment, Ghost-Faced Magician also looked slightly pale, his face half concealed, but still unavoidably displaying emotions not his own. That was fear. We must leave here now, no matter what. I have a premonition, he rasped. If we stay here any longer, something unpredictably horrifying will happen soon. Just the voice alone. The creepy chill it brought had already affected everyone's spirits and condition. Chapter 239. Even if one could force their heart not to fear, not to be terrified, when facing a truly horrifying existence, one naturally feels an oppressive presence that cannot be looked at directly, affecting not just the body but the mind and soul from every aspect. Inside here, only Su Qi wasn't affected. He could indeed see all the weirdness of the city but didn't even hear a sound, as if he had been deliberately bypassed. Although he wasn't sure why, Su Qi knew this city was related to that world's destruction, and that voice might also be related to the central area. Everyone. Su Qi had already taken out the horn used for commanding earlier. It seems that you all are quite panicked and at a loss. The crowd turned their gaze toward Su Qi. Someone gritted their teeth. This is all you're doing. If it wasn't for you leading us into this dangerous area, how could we have ended up like this? Su Qi shook his head. I am the one being hunted, and I cannot predict the future. I did not know anything about this place, and it certainly wasn't intentional to lead you here. As you've seen earlier, not even Paradise had noticed this place, let alone an ordinary player like me. Everything I've done was solely for self-defense. You blaming me is nothing more than victim blaming, moral hijacking, and a display of low quality. I believe any person with a conscience would not think this way. A string of clear, rapid-fire statements left the players, with a stiff expression. Well done. Seemed indeed so, but something felt off about it, as if they had been scolded. Zero, Luna Fern, Xuanwu, and others looked at Su Qi, who seemed rather sincere. They did not believe in coincidences, but they couldn't find any evidence either. They could only maintain a skeptical stance. Only Ethan Dawn's mouth twitched. He would never believe that 90% of this was probably false. His intuition told him. This guy's goal had been this place from the beginning. Only he didn't know how he achieved it or why. Penelope Bloom then spoke in a serious tone. Regardless, I think we shouldn't dwell on past grievances right now. Our goal is to work together as a team, help each other, and leave this place. If anyone has any thoughts or information, please share. The ghost-faced magician's eyes were cold as he looked at the distant twist. This kind of scene belongs to the lost land, and once trapped, we might lose our sense of direction. Luna Fern. This place is likely riddled with peculiar rules. Finding a path out of the city from here could be incredibly difficult. I suggest we split up. Zero's expression was cold and solemn. Everyone should move toward different twisted streets. Even if we cannot find a way out, We can bring back any information we collect. What if they don't make it back? That would mean they've eliminated a route that leads to death for us. Ruthless. The faces of the crowd changed slightly, but they had to admit it was a rational plan, and the other party would be taking part too. No one knew what dangers lay ahead. It was essentially sacrificing lives to trial and error. They proposed many more plans, none of which held even a 10% certainty. Su Buxian, won't you share your thoughts? The one speaking was Penelope Bloom, looking at the silent Su Qi. From the very beginning, many top clubs had begun to collaborate deeply, including Su Buxian, who had been pulled into these strategic discussions. But his attention didn't seem to be here. As one person asked, everyone else's gaze turned toward Su Buxian. Although they were reluctant to admit it, the fact was that this guy had been playing them, and his commanding of key points and handling of critical situations had shown extraordinary talent. Since you want me to share my thoughts, I'll keep it simple with a couple of comments. Su Qi paused. My suggestion is, why don't we ask the locals? Locals? The crowd was taken aback. He should be arriving soon. Su Qi's next sentence made everyone frown, seemingly not understanding. Wait a minute. Ethan Dawn caught on to Su Qi's frequency, his eyes wide. The local you're talking about, it wouldn't happen to be that voice we just heard, would it? Su Qi nodded slightly. Since we're seeking help, it seems the other party is in trouble. Whatever it is, we help it, and it helps us leave, which seems quite reasonable. I just don't have a good feeling about this, Ethan Dawn said in a trembling voice. Isn't this eerie setup exactly like the beginning of a horror movie? At this moment, everyone was still hesitant. Another person then spoke up in a grave tone. I think we can. The ghost-faced magician's eyes were somber. Although this is a mysterious entity we've encountered, an event we cannot clearly understand, it is currently our only clue. But why do you know it will return soon? The strange whispers, the deeply trapped cage, the sealed ritual. It's calling out for help to the creatures around. Su Qi said slowly as he picked up a photograph, the image on it sending a chill down everyone's spine. Because as they trembled in fear and stiffness, each person could vaguely sense a figure standing behind them. Looking closer, the figure could be seen appearing faint and intermittent, dressed in an odd yellow robe. And when it appears, the black fog in the sky, the twisted streetscape, everything clearly comes to a halt. Su Qi looked around. Look, just like now. Everyone watched their surroundings with suspicion, the spiritual sequencer even raising their head to take a look. Indeed, although everything seemed to be fluctuating, the black fog was not spinning, the distortion was merely rippling. It's coming. At this moment, everyone felt a coldness. No wonder it had been so obvious before. What should we do? They themselves were becoming somewhat panicked, looking to Su Qi for guidance. Obviously, we respond, Su Qi said. In the next instant, everyone shivered, and that eerie and terrifying voice echoed in their ears again, slowly lingering in everyone's mind, word by word. As Su Qi watched this scene unfold, he murmured to himself, Am I left out again? He slowly tossed the photograph, dispersing it into dust. How could this possibly be a shot taken with an ordinary camera? It was merely an illusion captured by his own eyes for a fleeting moment, just now made concrete. But indeed, this might truly be the desolate land. The city was dangerously extreme. He had been gathering all sorts of information, and everything he saw indicated a situation of almost certain death. In places marked with a question, there were majestic, complex, and abstruse rituals with an overwhelming density of information. Among them, the most direct piece of information was Yellow-Robed Master. He searched all his memories. He had never heard of these 4 words, but from the illusion caught by his eyes just a moment ago, he knew the Yellow-Robed Master was the one seeking help, and it seemed to be the key in a web of twisted, chaotic death lines linked to that sole path to survival. At this moment, listening to the raspy voice drifting up from the depths, like from the bottom of a deep pool, someone finally made a trembling response. Respected, great entity, What assistance do you require? The entire city suddenly whipped up into a gale. The surrounding distortions, just like a volcanic burst, started to surge towards them rapidly. But no one budged. They were all still trapped in that dazed nightmare realm. Not a single person noticed this. Everyone was enveloped. It seemed they were about to be carried off by the twisted spatial ripples to some place. And Su Qi. He watched silently as all distortions avoided him, and even when he reached out to touch them, the twisting ripples recoiled like a frightened young lady. Isolating me? Schoolyard bullying? Instead, Su Qi did not hesitate and ran straight towards the distortion. I'm getting on this kindergarten ride no matter what. Su Qi grabbed Ethan Dawn and Penelope Bloom, who were about to be taken away, and he also burst out his spiritual energy, manipulating the rules under such interference. In the next moment, reluctantly, amidst the twisting ripples, he was pulled in. Chapter 240 I Can Help You. Su Qi was swept into the twisted ripples. The sensation was bizarre, as if different doses of anesthesia had been injected into every part of his body. Sometimes it felt as if his hand was on his neck on his buttocks on a tree. The senses were in turmoil. The five senses seemed to be torn apart, indescribable. After the twisted ripples dissipated, Su Qi slowly opened his eyes. The moment he did, he felt a gust of chilly wind hit him, and all the players around him were sprawled on the ground, contorted in various poses, holding their heads as if they were recovering from a state of stupor and confusion. My head! It hurts so bad. What just happened? For a moment, I felt like my body was sliced into pieces. It seemed like an illusion, but it was too real. Penelope Bloom also took a deep breath. Are you all right? We are, more or less. Ethan Dawn looked unnerved at a red handprint on his shoulder. But why do I feel like someone was pawing at me just now? Penelope Bloom frowned slightly, seeming to have a similar mark on his shoulder. It feels like I had the same sensation. Su Buxian, do you have it? Ethan Dawn looked at Su Qi. It doesn't matter whether I have it or not. Don't get caught up in those details. Su Qi looked around seriously. Focus on the matter at hand. Haven't you noticed where we are now? At that moment, they found that all the players had been brought to a desolate place. A dark red sky dome, enveloping this area like a lid, with wild, twisted rituals like runes filling all directions with terrifying energy. Where on earth have we come to? Xuanwu looked around and said gravely, If I'm not mistaken, this is the place where that voice exists, though it seems to be bound by various rituals. The force we just felt seems to have brought us here. They also saw traces of rituals in the city, the energy aura between the city and the black fog vortex unabashedly revealed, with all the spiritual energy used by the players previously having been absorbed by the black fog above them. Now, from all these signs, was this all for that voice's existence? What kind of high-sequence being is this? Luna Fern said, not even smoking now, feeling the place was filled with ominous presences, and dared not to act rashly. This terrifying existence must be extraordinary, Zero stated calmly. But what it's asking assistance for, how can we, such insignificant beings, possibly help it? Su Qi looked into the distance and said softly, Just ask it directly. Everyone was startled, following his gaze. In the distance, at the center of a huge crossroad. But the surrounding city buildings had long been eroded, destruction, into ruins, and the cement on the ground had massive cracks like those left after an apocalyptic disaster. At the center was a completely ruptured crevice, forming a huge pit with an unclear bottom. But it was obvious that a vast amount of dark red fog was being absorbed into the huge ritual 100 meters in the sky dome. The entire dark red ritual was even more like countless chains, extending from the horizon and sealing off everything here. What do you say? Shall we all go over together? It looks like that's our only option now. While Su Qi looked at this scene, he could clearly see the huge, deep red exclamation mark extending to the sky dome, the eerie and terrifying aura seeping through, the exclamation mark displaying a countdown to destruction by the second. And that pit. Su Chi found it remarkably familiar. He stretched out his hand and compared. Though it has expanded more than tenfold compared to before and is more excessively weathered, the hole is still the same hole. Where the ancient god's heart had once fallen, where the traveling merchant had been encountered. It was special. After all, it was where two major events coincided. If promoted a bit, it could perhaps become a tourist check-in hotspot. It's just that I didn't expect to return to this world and find it different again, and oddly enough, there's also the addition of the yellow-robed master. Su Chi didn't think it was a coincidence. Like meteorites would fall into their craters, all traces must follow some pattern. He felt that what was happening now was also intricately connected to everything that had happened before. Su Chi surveyed everything around him. There were no signs of any other living things, and deathly silence pervaded everywhere. Let's move on, everyone. Be careful, don't panic, don't be noisy, and act within your strength. If you can't move forward, immediately retreat to a safe place, Justice Chief said solemnly. Everyone knew they couldn't stay long in this place, and they must find the opportunity to leave quickly no matter what. All the players started moving, quickening their pace towards the pit. Under the dark red skylight, everything seemed so eerily bizarre. No, it's not that easy to approach. With each step closer, they felt the weight pressing on their bodies grow heavier, and their heartbeats quickened. What on earth is happening? Take deep breaths, it's normal. See the massive amount of energy being sucked into the center. The energy around is too vast to approach. We must withstand this impact. Of course, this impact can be shared by all of us, although it will mix with all sorts of twists, unpredictable weirdness, but if we grit our teeth, it shouldn't be too problematic. Besides, and Su Chi, looking at that deep pit, said softly, I want to remind you all of one thing.